the Hogwarts professor mixed into Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201 Tony Stark, I'm no less capable than others. Okay, sir, it started. Tony raised his lips when he heard Jarvis' voice. He didn't believe that Lockhart could be so arrogant this time. At the same time, a large number of machines similar to round cakes placed in various locations in the villa began to start quickly and rotated rapidly, emitting some strange fluctuations all the time, covering the entire villa. Jarvis, pour Professor Lockhart a glass of water. No, pour a glass of red wine. Professor Lockhart has come here with great difficulty, and we can't let him go home disappointed. As if feeling that the machine he had carefully studied was effective, Tony ordered with some pride. While ordering, he raised his hand and asked the surrounding mechanical arms to start unloading the armor. Okay, sir, the red wine you asked for is here. Jarvis' voice sounded, and a mechanical arm holding a rectangular plate with a glass of red wine on it moved quickly and steadily to Lockhart. At the same time, the mechanical arm holding the red wine landed in front of Tony, who had just left the armor. Tony reached out and picked up the wine glass, raised it to Lockhart, and said with a smile, "Come on, Professor Lockhart, have a drink to celebrate the great breakthrough of the Golden Galleon project." At this moment, Lockhart raised his eyebrows with a half smile on his face. He just felt a strange fluctuation emanating from the whole villa. After a little exploration, he found that it had the effect of dispelling magic. It felt a bit like a thief-proof waterfall, which could dispel spells, but the effect was much weaker. Despite this, Lockhart was really surprised by Tony's genius. It has only been a short time, and he has already developed a technological weapon that can affect magic. Although it has almost no effect on wizards like him who have undergone 2 rounds of magic transformation. But for novice wizards like Ian, it will still have a significant impact. Because of the existence of this interference, not only will the consumption of magic increase significantly, but the spell may be difficult to cast successfully. He said, "Why did Tony insist on meeting at the villa?" "This is to prepare for revenge for the last time he was given a blow." Recalling Tony's character in the original plot, Lockhart was not surprised. Tony was not the kind of person who would swallow his anger. Like him, he was not willing to suffer any loss. Thoughts flashed through his mind, and Lockhart picked up the wine glass, shook the red wine in the glass slightly, then raised it, chuckled, and said to Tony, "Tony, I hope you can really give me a surprise later. Then I will also prepare a gift for you." Well, this gift has 2 meanings. As he said, Lockhart drank the red wine in the glass, and Tony did the same. As if observing the change in Lockhart's expression, Tony was a little confused. Why did he feel that the other party didn't seem to be worried at all? Could it be that it didn't work? No, it should be effective. The previous experiment was quite effective. Then, Lockhart said, "Tony, it just so happens that a friend gave me a bottle of red wine. It tastes good. You can try it after we finish talking." As he spoke, Lockhart stretched out his right hand, swiped the ring slightly, opened a small portal leading to his study, and reached out to take out a bottle of red wine. Tony looked at the scene in front of him, and his expression changed slightly. Damn, how come the magic radiation jammer that he had studied so hard was ineffective? Is it because the success rate is not enough? "Jarvis, turn on the extreme power," Tony whispered. "Sir, after turning on the extreme power, it is best to turn it off within 3 minutes. After more than 3 minutes, it is likely to self-ignite and destroy due to high-speed operation. Do you want to turn it on?" Jarvis also reminded in a low voice. "Turn it on." Tony looked at Lockhart, who was quite cool in front of him, casting the portal magic, and said with gritted teeth, "If it's broken, it's broken. At worst, he can make another one. Anyway, he has plenty of money. In any case, face cannot be lost first." "Okay, sir." As soon as Jarvis finished speaking, all the jammers started running at high speed, turning on the maximum power. At this moment, Lockhart seemed to have no idea that the person and the machine were talking. He was looking down at the red wine in his hand with interest, as if this bottle of red wine sent by Cassius was so magical. Well, the small portal in the air has not been closed. It seems to symbolize something, or to explain something else. As the interference fluctuations of the entire villa increased rapidly, in the eyes of Stark, the portal began to shake slightly, and the red flame light became slightly dim, with signs of dissipation. But in a flash, with a surge of magic power, the red flame light shone again, and even runes, that were constantly flowing, could be seen faintly. "Jarvis, increase the power again," Tony ordered immediately, unconvinced. "Sir, if you increase." "Shut up, Jarvis, turn it up as high as you can," Tony interrupted and ordered. Jarvis was silent for a moment, then said, "Okay, sir." Instantly, the magic radiation jammer increased its power again. This time, Tony could faintly smell the burning smell of the machine. Lockhart, on the other hand, had a faint smile on his face. He sensed that in various locations in Tony's villa, a large number of high-speed rotating, round-shaped machines were constantly rising in temperature and producing a large amount of burning smell. Feeling the strength of this magic dispelling, Lockhart had to praise it in his heart. This can already have an impact on the magic of adult wizards. In other words, if it can be opened for a long time, it is undoubtedly a sharp weapon. The only pity is that Tony is limited by materials and cannot refine a magic dispelling weapon for long-term use. With a flash of thought, Lockhart looked at the slightly dim portal and the joy in Tony's eyes. A kind of evil taste suddenly appeared in his mind. As soon as the thought moved, the shape of the portal began to change. In Tony's eyes, he found that the shape of the portal had changed, and naturally thought that his magic dispeller had played a very important role. The pride in his heart was self-evident. This time, he won after all, and finally got his face back a little. Then Tony's face darkened. He found that the shape of the portal was becoming more and more familiar. In his eyes, in an oval portal, multiple tiny portals began to emerge again, forming a hole, slowly changing into the shape of eyes, nose, and ears. At first glance, it looked like a person's face. Soon, in Tony's eyes, the face formed by multiple portals became more and more familiar. It was himself with a dark face. At this moment, Tony's anger suddenly exploded. Isn't this a naked mockery of the uselessness of the machine he built? When he was about to summon the battle armor to fight, suddenly, whoosh, a strong smell of burning came, and a lot of flames could be seen faintly around the villa. It was the result of the radiation jammer turning on the power beyond the limit. It began to self-ignite. This made Tony's face straighten, and he quickly called Jarvis to start putting out the fire. "This is his house. What's the matter? Wait until he puts out the fire." Lockhart, who felt this scene, frowned. With a slight wave of his hand, the mocking version of the portal disappeared, and then, with a slight wave of the magic wand, a chill quickly spread around. Under Lockhart's control, each magic radiation jammer was wrapped in a large amount of cold air. Soon, a large amount of pale white frost appeared on the surface of each machine. The flames and the smell of burning all disappeared. Then, next to each magic radiation jammer, a small red flame portal appeared. In an instant, under Jarvis's observation, the Stark Villa was surrounded by red flame circles, which moved slightly and engulfed each magic radiation jammer. Then, it appeared in front of Tony and Lockhart. Tony, who saw Jarvis's projection and the large number of jammers placed in front of him, was silent again. "Damn, I lost again this time. I failed to show off and got slapped in the face." The third update for today is over, and there will be 5 updates tomorrow. Chapter 202 Tony's new algorithm, Lockhart's Big Pie. "Tony, come and have a drink. This bottle of wine was given to me by a good friend of mine. It contains a lot of magical plants. It is of very good quality and has a very good nourishing effect on the body." Lockhart looked at Tony, shook the deep purple wine in his hand, and said with a smile. At this moment, Tony Stark looked at Lockhart viciously, and then glanced at the large number of magic radiation jammers emitting cold air on the ground. Then, he said to Jarvis, "Pick up these garbage. Also, take out my collection of diamond-made high-footed wine glasses, and take out all my cabinets of wine." "Humph, I don't understand magic, but showing off your wealth. Do you have as much money as me?" Soon, in front of Lockhart, a whole set of crystal clear, Sparkling, diamond-polished high-footed wine glasses were placed on the table. Not far away, there was a tall wine cabinet filled with various wines and price tags for each bottle of wine below. Well, this was specially made by Tony for JARVIS. Wine, unlike white wine, is not like Maute, which has a very clear price. If the price is not marked well, its value cannot be shown at all, or it is feared that Lockhart will not understand the value of these wines. The most important thing about showing off wealth is that the price must be marked properly, and the sense of value must be sufficient. Otherwise, it is not called showing off wealth, but a person acting. At this time, Lockhart, watching Tony's actions of showing off his wealth, was a little speechless in his heart, but he still envied him. Sure enough, starting from scratch and inheriting an industry are two different concepts. Tony, a dog tycoon who inherited a family business, treats money as money. Unlike him, although he spends money generously, he basically has a purpose. Except for buying some delicious food, he rarely uses it for enjoyment. You asked Lockhart to show off his wealth, and for a moment, Lockhart really couldn't think of what he had specially to show off. Especially looking at the set of wine glasses in front of him, that were specially polished with diamonds. Lockhart wanted to complain. Who would think of doing such a thing? Isn't it just a wine glass? Just like Tony, a dog tycoon who treats money as money, will buy it for collection, or use it to compare and show off wealth. Seeing that Lockhart did not make any move, Tony showed a smug smile on his face. He was a professional at showing off his wealth. Then, he pretended to be generous and said, "Come on, Lockhart, try this set of diamond polished wine glasses. I spent 1 million to collect this set. If we are not good friends, I usually won't take it out." Seeing Tony's versatile behavior, Lockhart smiled and took the wine glass to look at it for a few times. Then, he opened the wine given by Cassilis. In an instant, a clear aroma of wine spread all around. After Tony smelled the aroma of wine, his eyes lit up. Just based on this aroma of wine, he felt very good. Thoughts flashed through his mind, and Tony watched Lockhart pour the wine. Then, he picked up the glass of wine in front of him, and tasted it slowly. Well, the taste is good. Although it is not the best, it is also in the upper middle level. However, I felt a warm current flowing through my body. This is my first experience. This should be the effect of the magic plant that Lockhart mentioned. It is somewhat similar to the magic potion. At this moment, Lockhart was also slowly savoring the glass of red wine. The atmosphere between the two began to slowly calm down. To put it bluntly, the actions just now were just a joke, teasing each other. After all, no one could really attack the other. In the end, Tony also took advantage of the verbal advantage. Anyway, he would not suffer any loss. Later, it was time to talk about business. Time could not be wasted like this. Tony, about the gold galleons. The last time I heard Carlson talk about radiation. How is it now? Lockhart spoke first, and brought the topic back to the topic. Hearing Lockhart's question, Tony naturally understood what he meant. After thinking for a while, he said, "Lockhart, since you provided multiple magical radiations last time, our difficulty is how to adjust the properties of the magical radiation, to make it as consistent as possible with the magical radiation on the gold galleons. Regarding this, I personally developed a set of algorithms and asked JARVIS to adjust it. It was found that the radiation can reach a similarity of nearly 95%. The rest is difficult to achieve with current technology." As he said that, Tony ordered JARVIS, "JARVIS, go to my laboratory and take out the number 145 gold coin." After giving the order, Tony took Lockhart's wine without hesitation, poured himself a glass, and prepared to taste it slowly. After seeing this, Lockhart smiled and put the empty glass in front of Tony. Tony also poured a glass and handed it to Lockhart. After taking the wine glass, Lockhart took a sip and waited quietly. Soon, JARVIS controlled a robot to come over with a box. Lockhart's eyes lit up when he saw the golden coin, or galleon, in the box. He just felt it slightly and found that there seemed to be no problem. Then, Tony took the galleon handed over by the robot, held it in front of Lockhart, and said in a deep voice, "Lockhart, this is a galleon I synthesized. The magic radiation has been fine-tuned and reached the 95% standard I mentioned before. Take a look and see if it meets your needs. After Lockhart took it, he took it in his hand and took out a galleon from the space bag. He put the 2 galleons in front of him and carefully felt the difference. After a long time, Lockhart opened his eyes and a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. After a test, he just felt that something was wrong. If he hadn't taken out a sample for comparison and testing, he might have ignored this point. Moreover, apart from the slight difference in properties, this synthetic galleon can completely replace the real galleon for alchemy. However, what he needs is the currency attribute of the galleon. Although the alchemy attribute is important, it is not as important as the currency attribute of the galleon. With a flash of thought, Lockhart decided to let Bruno the Goblin take a look. After all, he was a senior expert in counterfeiting. Then, Lockhart waved his wand and opened a portal with sparks. On the other side of the portal, Bruno the Goblin was constantly refining magic cards. This was the task Lockhart had assigned to him before. The Wang Xiang book cafe behind would only receive more and more customers, so it was very important to reserve magic cards in advance. Lockhart saw Bruno concentrating on making cards, so he reminded him, "Bruno, come here." Hearing the familiar voice in his ears, Bruno turned his head and saw the face of his master Lockhart on the other side of the portal. He immediately trotted over and asked, "Master, what do you need Bruno for?" "We have refined 350 to level 5 magic cards and 50 level 4 magic cards. Level 3 magic cards are being studied. We are thinking about how to integrate space teleportation into magic cards. We will need your guidance later." Lockhart could see Bruno's excitement at this time, and he was not surprised. He had previously made magic cards to stimulate him. However, according to the future development prospects of the magic card, a big pie was drawn, and the title of Father of Magic card was added. It can be said that Bruno devoted himself to the construction of the magic card system. Thoughts flashed through his mind quickly, and Lockhart directly picked up the 2 gold galleons in his hand, handed them to the other party, and instructed the goblin Bruno. "Bruno, come and see what the difference is between these 2 gold galleons." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203 Wizard Bank. Hearing the order from his master Lockhart, after taking the 2 gold galleons, the goblin Bruno first quickly looked around and looked closely at the large number of frozen magic radiation jammers not far away. When he looked at Tony, he paused slightly, then glanced over and completely ignored him. Then, he lowered his head and carefully studied the 2 gold galleons in his hand. At this moment, Tony was just surprised by the goblin's strange appearance and short stature. As a result, the other party's ignoring look made him feel uncomfortable. But he didn't say much. If he was unhappy with Lockhart, he could study some weapons specifically and have fun, so that he could keep a backup in the later stage. But for Lockhart's men, that was not the case. Well, it really felt a bit of a loss of status. The pride in his heart really made him unable to have the intention to attack a lackey. Seeing this strange creature, that was a bit like an alien studying 2 gold galleons, Tony poured himself another glass of wine. While tasting, he looked at the other party's strange appearance with interest. Although I heard the description from S.H.I.E.L.D., I was still a little surprised when I saw it for the first time in real life. After a long time, Bruno the Goblin slowly raised his head, looked at Lockhart with a look of surprise, raised the gold galleon in his left hand, and quickly asked, "Master, who made this gold galleon?" "It's an absolute master level. My magic power has been finely adjusted to be almost the same as that of the goblins in Gringotts." Tony heard Bruno's surprise, raised his wine glass to Lockhart, shook the wine, saluted slightly, took a sip, and showed a modest, but actually proud smile. After seeing this, Lockhart ignored it directly, shook the ring slightly, and a transparent ripple spread around, affecting the images that Tony and the surrounding surveillance cameras could observe. The following things are not suitable for Tony and others to know. Then, Lockhart asked Bruno several questions in succession. "Bruno, does this gold galleon meet my requirements? Based on your observation, Are there any mistakes or omissions in it? Is there any way to make up for it? In response to his master Lockhart's question, Bruno looked at the gold galleon in his hand and thought about it, then said hesitantly, "Master, if it meets your requirements, it can be barely considered qualified. Everything is in place, including the magical properties. However, they may not be able to detect one or two, but once the number increases, the probability of being discovered will increase significantly." Hearing this, Lockhart nodded slightly to show that he understood, then looked at Bruno, and continued to wait for his answer. Bruno thought for a moment before speaking. "Master, the problem with this gold galleon actually lies in the magic. Although the magic on this gold galleon has been adjusted, it is basically the same as that of the Gringotts goblins. But it lacks a key step, which is also the most important anti-counterfeiting method for Gringotts goblins, and that is the environment of the entire vault. The entire underground vault itself is a magical environment. Each batch of gold galleons will be immersed in magic during production, so the produced gold galleons will have this difficult to imitate aura. If we want to make up for it, it's actually very simple. Just put the gold galleons in the vault for a period of time, and naturally we can make up for the final defect. But this is very tricky. They will have special goblins responsible for daily patrols, and it is difficult to sneak in. Not to mention, putting in a large number of gold galleons. If you are not careful, this batch of gold galleons will be taken away directly by the Gringotts goblins, and you can't find it back, even if you want to. Hearing this, Lockhart thought for a while, and a plan came to his mind. Then, Bruno reminded him, "Master, I actually thought of a plan before, which is to place a large number of gold galleons in my own vault, to crack the final anti-counterfeiting measures. But I gave up after I learned about the Gringotts goblins' approach, because they have special people coming to check the vault every once in a while, and this way is also blocked." Hearing this, Lockhart nodded again, indicating that he understood. This problem can be solved. With a flash of thought, Lockhart asked again, "Bruno, do you have any other questions?" Then he continued to emphasize, "What I mean is, if the problem you just mentioned is solved, can we completely deceive the eyes of the Gringotts goblins? Let them treat our gold galleons as the gold galleons they produce." "Yes, Master, this can be done," the goblin Bruno said categorically. "Our gold galleons are the same as real gold galleons. The only difference is the goblins' anti-counterfeiting measures. After all, the gold galleons produced by Gringotts can be used for trading, while we can only be regarded as alchemical products. Gringotts goblins don't recognize them at all." In this regard, Lockhart nodded in understanding. After all, the other party basically controls the currency sovereignty of the wizard world. In other words, the final right of interpretation. All wizards are used to storing their own gold galleons in Gringotts, so it naturally has a proprietary interpretation of currency. Even the dumbest goblins know that they should use the gold galleons they produce to further strengthen their control over currency, instead of relaxing restrictions and giving others the opportunity to touch Gringotts' status. Otherwise, Lockhart directly uses the magic power of wizards to refine gold galleons, combined with some technological means. Lockhart is confident that he can directly overthrow Gringotts. Apart from anything else, he directly opens a wizard bank and uses the model of modern banks to carry out dimensionality reduction attacks. You know, the goblins in Gringotts charge management fees, while modern banks not only do not charge fees, but also give interest. Even if the goblins in Gringotts follow suit, Lockhart has various means to make their losses greater than their gains, and they will eventually have to give up. Unfortunately, due to the lack of the right to interpret currency, such a plan can only remain on paper. After all, no one recognizes it, and it is useless to open it. But later, we can plan it. Thoughts were swirling in his mind. Lockhart quickly sorted out the various ideas in his mind, removed them, left the essence, and perfected the plan. Then, he untied the magic he had just cast on Tony and Jarvis, and asked with a smile, "By the way, Tony, I forgot to ask one thing, that is, how much does it cost to synthesize this gold galleon? Is it efficient?" At this moment, Tony just thought that the man and the goblin discussed the difficult problems in magic technology, and he listened vaguely. But he still wrote it down. Maybe it will be useful later. Although the magic radiation jammer failed this time, it is obvious that it works. In this case, we can slowly optimize it later. Then, he heard Lockhart's question. Tony roughly calculated and said, Lockhart, if we exclude the previous research expenses, the cost of this gold galleon alone is about 100,000 yuan. As for efficiency, don't worry about it. My new algorithm doesn't take long. If everything is sufficient, it will not be a problem to produce 1,000 a day. Hearing this, Lockhart quickly calculated in his mind and smiled bitterly. If he really relied on the US dollar, he would only have about 10 million gold galleons. In other words, he could only make 100 at most. That would be a big loss. 100 gold galleons, if all were used to buy potions and then sold to S.H.I.E.L.D. for research, would be worth more than that. If it is refined on a large scale, how low can the cost be? Lockhart asked again. If it is large scale, if you can provide enough magic metals and continue to provide a lot of magic power, the cost can indeed be reduced. Tony thought for a while and replied, at least it can be reduced by 50,000 or 60,000, or even more. It is not impossible. We have to verify it in detail to get an accurate number. Hearing this, Lockhart nodded slightly to show that he understood. Then, he thought for a while and said, well, I will ask Bruno to bring a batch of magic metals over later. He will be responsible for adding magic power to the gold galleons and give some suggestions from the perspective of magic. Try to keep the cost to the lowest possible level. Chapter 204 Captain America Steve and Peggy Carter. Early morning, New York, Manhattan Midtown apartment. Ring, ring, ring. The alarm rang, and a short-haired man with 8-pack abs and well-proportioned muscles lying on the bed opened his eyes and turned off the alarm next to him. He quickly got out of bed and walked to the window, habitually looking at the green of Central Park not far away, feeling the breeze in the sky and breathing fresh air. A nostalgic expression appeared on his face. Then, he went to the bathroom, washed up simply, looked at the familiar face in the mirror, and gently patted his face, as if he was missing or reminding himself 70 years had passed. Steve, now you need to re-understand the whole world. Soon, Steve changed into a grey shirt, left his room, and walked out of the apartment. He was going to start his daily running exercise, which was both recovery and adjustment. Step, step, step. With the sound of light footsteps, Steve straightened his chest, waved his hands slightly left and right, and ran around Central Park. Near Central Park in the early morning, there were many people like Steve, wearing shirts and running. But it was obvious that Steve's speed was faster than that of an average person. At the same time, his shirt was not wet, which meant that he was sweating very little. 1 lap, 2 laps, 10 laps. In just half an hour, Steve had already run 10 laps around the Central Forest, about 15 kilometers. Inhale. Inhale. Although Steve had already run 10 laps, his grey shirt was already soaked with sweat. But his breathing rhythm was still steady, as if to indicate that it would not be a problem to continue running 10 laps. Just as he was about to run the 12th lap, suddenly, Steve found that there was a red antique car next to him, following him at his running speed. And inside was a middle-aged man with a slightly fat body and slightly sparse hair, waving at him constantly. It was Carlson. At this time, Carlson looked at his idol, and the excitement in his eyes was self-evident. He wanted to run out of the car immediately to ask for an autograph. But when he thought of his mission, Carlson controlled himself to calm down and suppress his excitement. Waving at his idol, he soon saw Steve start to slow down and stand by the road. Seeing this, Carlson quickly parked his Laura aside, got out of the car, trotted all the way, ran to Steve, and introduced himself with a somewhat excited tone. Captain, hello, I'm Phil Carlson, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's nice to meet you today, Captain. I have admired you very much before. Steve looked at Carlson in front of him, especially seeing that he looked like his fanatical fan. An awkward but polite smile appeared on his face. He has always been very bad at dealing with fans, and he doesn't know how to refuse. After thinking about it, Steve still said to Carlson, Coulson, did Nick Fury ask you to come? What's the matter? Well, Steve still thinks it is more appropriate to bring the topic back to the topic. Hearing his idol's question, Carlson quickly came back to his senses, recalled his mission, and said, yes, Captain. Director Fury asked me to tell you that you wanted to see Ms. Carter before, and the director has already arranged it. We have done the work for Ms. Carter, and we can meet at any time today." Hearing this, Steve, who was originally calm, was stirred up in his heart and suppressed his excitement and said, "Okay, Coulson, let's go now." Then, as if he thought of something, he looked at his clothes that were already soaked with sweat and said a little awkwardly, "Coulson, how long will it take us? I'll go back and change clothes first." Seeing the captain's expression of expectation and anxiety, Coulson comforted him. "Captain, we are not in a hurry. We will take a plane directly to Los Angeles later. It only takes an hour. There is plenty of time." Well, as a senior fan of the captain, he knows the relationship between the captain and Ms. Carter very well. In fact, there have been no less than 1,000 speculations about the relationship between the two over the years. Especially as the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D., Ms. Carter has a very high prestige in S.H.I.E.L.D., and Coulson admires her even more. Today, he will see his two idols meet. Thinking of this, Coulson was a little excited. Hearing this, Steve nodded quickly. He couldn't be too shabby. When he met Carter today, he owed him a dance. 2 hours later, in a villa in Los Angeles, Steve stood on the path outside the villa, with Coulson and Nick Fury standing on both sides. He looked a little nervous, with his fists clenched, looking forward to it, but also a little uneasy. 70 years. For him, it may just be a closing of the eyes and an opening of the eyes. But for Carter, it was a real 70 years. Every minute and every second was a real experience. How much has Carter changed? Thinking of 70 years, Steve felt a little uneasy, cramped and nervous. "Captain, Miss Carter is waiting for you inside. Go in now. We won't accompany you." Nick Fury patted Steve on the shoulder and comforted him. "Okay, Director Fury, thank you for your help this time," Steve said, suppressing his inner insecurity, and walked directly into the path, and walked into the villa's door. Click, click. With the sound of the house door opening, Steve entered the living room, and followed Nick Fury's instructions, to walk to the bedroom next door. Soon, in a room with an open door, Steve saw an old lady lying on the bed with a breathing mask on her face. Her arms were placed on the quilt, and some age spots could be clearly seen. However, Steve could vaguely recall her appearance when she was young through her face. It was exactly Peggy Carter that he thought about day and night. Seeing the old Carter, Steve was filled with sadness and guilt. After 70 years, what did he miss? His lover is already old. And why can't he accompany her until old age? At this moment, the young nurse standing by also saw Steve. He immediately knew that this was the captain that the director mentioned, and hurriedly called Miss Carter, who was lying on the bed. At this time, Carter also noticed Steve standing at the door and waved tremblingly. Seeing this, Steve hurried forward, gently held Carter's hand, stared at her, and said with some guilt, "Carter, I'm late." Outside the villa, Coulson and Nick Fury stood in the shade of the tree, looking towards the direction of the villa's bedroom, as if they could see the scene of Steve and Carter meeting at this time. Not long after, Coulson on the side, asked with some concern, "Director, are you sure it's appropriate to let the captain go? The captain has already missed 70 years of experience, and now he should have adapted to the modern living environment. Will it have any bad effects if he suddenly contacts wizards?" Nick Fury looked at Coulson beside him lightly, looked at Coulson's worried expression, and said lightly, "Believe in the captain. He is the most suitable candidate. Resounding reputation, righteous heart, firm stance. Captain, more suitable than anyone else in S.H.I.E.L.D. There are 2 more updates at 4 p.m. Chapter 205 Captain America enters Venetian Book Cafe. In the morning, Queens, Bourne Street. Steve, wearing a black cap and brown leather jacket, was carefully examining every store on the street, as if he was looking for his destination. He scanned back and forth several times, but didn't seem to find anything unusual. Recalling Coulson's reminder before, Steve reached into his pocket with his right hand and took out the black card. He looked at every store on the street again. Suddenly, the silver-white wall seemed as crystal clear as jade. On the wall, dark blue lines appeared, as if outlining a beautiful pattern. In the middle of the lines, it seemed that there was liquid flowing, emitting a faint blue light. Right above the store, there was a black plaque, and above the plaque was a light golden dragon, slowly swimming around the middle text. And the text was written in large letters, Wangxiang Book Cafe. Steve nodded secretly when he found that the scene in front of him was the same as Carlson's description. Then, he walked towards Wangxiang Book Cafe. Steve walked to the door of the book cafe, looked at the black door handle in front of him, took a deep breath, and then pushed it open and entered. The moment he entered, Steve suddenly found that he seemed to have come to a small square, with marble floors on the ground and bright and soft lights above. Subconsciously looking back at the door of this Vincian book cafe, the change in space made him feel incredible. Then, Steve felt the air around him, which seemed to be sweeter, or the overall environment was very pleasant. Just staying at the door felt very comfortable. Even, he felt that his muscles, which were originally tense due to being frozen for a long time, began to relax slowly, as if he had come to a hot spring bath. Suddenly, his pupils shrank. A red flame-colored halo appeared not far away, and a figure in yellow clothes walked out of it. This scene shocked Steve's heart, but he tried to keep his expression calm. He remembered what Carlson said, there might be some things in the book cafe that were beyond common sense, but try not to make a fuss. Inhale. Inhale. Steve took a deep breath to control his inner emotions, took the black card, and walked forward like the yellow figure not far away. Along the way, Steve found that this place, similar to a small square, seemed to be specially provided for these strange people to leave or come in, because he occasionally saw someone opening a portal with a red flame halo to walk out or leave. As for the door he came in before, it seemed to be useless, just a decoration. No magician could use it. Everyone seemed to know how to open the portal, which made Steve secretly amazed. Soon, he saw the person in yellow clothes walking on the counter, saying a few words to the little girl in front of him, picking up a black card like the one in his hand, and swiping it towards a certain place, then turned and left. Before leaving, he obviously noticed the other party, looked at him, and there was a hint of surprise in his eyes, but he said nothing. After the other party left, Steve walked to the counter like him, and said to the girl in front of him, "Hello, I'm looking for Professor Lockhart." Well, in his eyes, although Vera is tall and pretty, she is still a little girl. After all, she is only about 20 years old, while he is already in his 80s or 90s. Vera looked at the other person, and felt that he looked familiar, but he didn't think much about it and replied gently, "Hello, what do you want to do with Professor Lockhart?" Mr. Carlson of SHIELD suggested that I come to Universal Book Cafe. Steve said, he said that Professor Lockhart might be able to help me. "What's your name?" Vera asked directly. "Also, what's the matter specifically? Please be clear. My mentor never likes trouble. I can convey your request to my mentor, but if you can't express it clearly, my mentor directly refuses. There is nothing I can do." Hearing what Vera said, Steve was silent for a while, thought about it, and slowly said, "I'm Steve Rogers. I hope to get magic potions or other things from Professor Lockhart that can make people healthy or return to youth. Among them, I'm willing to pay the corresponding price." When talking about the price, Steve felt a little weak in his heart. Although Nick Fury said that their SHIELD could provide the price, he felt that it was a little unreliable. After hearing Steve's self-introduction, Vera was suddenly stunned. Thinking of the list of key focus given to her by her mentor, she looked at the other person's face again, and found that it was indeed the world-famous Captain America. She was surprised. According to the information she had obtained before, this Captain America might have disappeared for nearly 70 years. Now he is still as young as before. It is really incredible. Well, if she can stay young like Captain America, it would be great. The thought flashed through her mind, and Vera said to Steve, "Mr. Rogers, wait a moment, I will contact the mentor here." Steve nodded gently to show that he understood, and then stood aside and carefully observed the surrounding environment. From the direction of the counter, not only can you clearly see the small square behind, but also you can see many people in the book cafe drinking coffee and reading books leisurely. Just as he was about to carefully observe the name of each book, suddenly, a voice came from his ear. "Mr. Rogers, my tutor said he will be here in a while. It may take a while. Do you choose to stay in the study first, or find a place in the hall to have a cup of coffee and read a book?" After hearing Vera's voice, Steve thought for a moment and said directly, I will wait for Professor Lockhart in the study. Okay, Mr. Rogers. Vera nodded and rang the bell next to him. In an instant, the house elf gold coin appeared in front of Vera and glanced at Steve next to him. He said directly, Vera, which desk or study does this gentleman want to go to? Well, in recent times, the house elf gold coin has been very familiar with this process. When Vera called him, he usually took the guest to a certain desk or study. There was basically nothing else. Gold coin. Take this gentleman to study number 101. The tutor will discuss something with him later. Hearing Vera mention study number 101, Gold Coin was a little surprised. He knew that this was the study dedicated to his master. He couldn't help but look at the one next to him. Hey, it's a muggle. After noticing that the other party had no magical fluctuations, the Gold Coin was surprised again. However, due to the special training of the Master Lockhart, the Gold Coin's expression did not change. He waved to Steve and said, let's go, sir. I'll take you to the Master's study. Steve looked at the strange creature Gold Coin in front of him, and a flash of surprise flashed in his eyes, but he resisted asking more questions, nodded directly, followed the Gold Coin, and walked into the book cafe. Well, now meeting Professor Lockhart is the most important thing, and don't do unnecessary actions for the rest. Following the Gold Coin and walking into the depths of the book cafe, Steve can easily observe a large number of wizards reading or chatting, as well as a snake sitting on the desk. Yes, Steve was a little surprised when he found this snake just now. But when he found that the people around him were not surprised at all, he knew that everyone was already familiar with it, so he didn't say much. Soon, the Gold Coin opened the door of the study room 101, and Steve entered it and saw the desk and chair in the middle of the study. He instantly understood it, greeted the Gold Coin, and sat on the chair. Without asking any more questions, he closed his eyes quietly and waited for Professor Lockhart to arrive. Chapter 206, Creating the Magical Currency of the Marvel World, Kamar-Taj, Bamboo Grove Tea Room. The Bamboo Grove Tea Room is located deep in Kamar-Taj. It is called the Bamboo Grove Tea Room because it is full of bamboos. There are many tea rooms here, and the largest one in the middle is reserved for the Supreme Sorcerer. On the side, there are some small tea rooms for some powerful Kamar-Taj mages to rest, drink tea, chat, etc. On the tea table in the middle of a tea room, there is a pot of tea and 3 teacups. Morin sat opposite Lockhart, and there was an empty seat next to him, as if waiting for a guest to come. At this moment, Lockhart waved his hand gently, and the teapot in the middle floated in the air, pouring a cup of tea for Morin and himself. Morin, when will Master David come? Lockhart raised the teacup, took a sip, and asked Morin. Wait a little longer, Lockhart. Morin thought for a moment and replied helplessly, I reminded David before. Once he starts studying magical items, he tends to become obsessed with them and forget the time. I asked someone to remind him just now. He should be here soon. Okay. Lockhart nodded slightly to show that he understood. Then, Morin asked curiously, by the way, Lockhart, you contacted me before and asked Master David to refine a magic item that stores magic power. Although I'm not a wizard specializing in alchemy, I remember that this kind of magic item is not difficult to refine. Moreover, I have seen the magic items you have refined, and your level can be said to be quite good. Let me remind you that David has no interest in refining ordinary magic items. He still likes the kind that is challenging, and his fee standard is not low. Okay, Morin. Lockhart smiled and replied, don't worry, the magic item refined this time will definitely not be easy. I'm not sure myself, so I asked Master David. What item? Morin asked curiously. Of course, if it's very important, then don't tell me. You can just have a good chat with David at that time. This magic item is very important to me, Lockhart said with a smile. However, you will definitely know it later, so it doesn't hurt to talk to you in advance. Afterwards, Lockhart poured Morin another cup of tea, and then he spoke slowly. The magic card I gave you last time you came to the Universal Book Cafe is still there, right? I introduced it to you before. This magic card can store and release a certain amount of magic power, and it will all be converted into magic points and consumed at the Universal Book Cafe. However, there is a problem now. There are already some mages who have a lot of magic points in their hands, and the magic points of their magic cards have reached the limit. Now the extra magic points are all kept in the magic storage of the Universal Book Cafe and can be withdrawn at any time. And I'm worried that as more mages come to the Universal Book Cafe, the magic storage will not be enough, so I asked Master David to refine a large magic storage in advance. It will facilitate the trading of magic points in the future. Hearing this, Morin was thoughtful. He knew Lockhart's magic card and magic point system before. He had some guesses about his ideas, but he was not optimistic. In his opinion, what Hart wanted to do was to fully promote the magic points and use them as a universal currency for transactions. As the pioneer of this currency, Lockhart could obviously gain a lot of benefits. But Kamar-Taj has not had a commonly circulated currency for thousands of years, which in itself is a problem. Morin felt that it was normal for Lockhart to have such an idea. And why was he not optimistic? Because before Lockhart, there were people who had the same idea as him. They even took action and prepared to create corresponding magic currency to facilitate all mages to trade. But in the end, they all failed. The most important thing is that the number of mages in Kamar-Taj is not particularly large. In fact, because of the resistance to dimensional invasion, there will be a certain amount of war damage every few years. If there are many mages, it will undoubtedly be troublesome to trade. Then currency plays a medium role in it, reducing transaction costs, and it will be very easy to become popular. But the problem is that there are really not many mages in Kamar-Taj. Although there are new mages every year, there are also war damages. The number has always been kept within a range. At this time, the role of currency is dispensable, and everyone can barter, which is very convenient. After all, there are not many wizards. If you want to know some potion masters or alchemy masters, you can always get what you want. Everyone is a wizard of Kamar-Taj, living together with your status here, and you can naturally get what you want by paying a certain price. Even most of the materials can be obtained by yourself through the secret realm of Kamar-Taj, and even if you want to refine them yourself, you can go to the library to study. Therefore, the demand for magic currency by the wizards of Kamar-Taj is really very small. The so-called magic currency is at most circulated in a small range, and it is impossible to be popular among all wizards. For example, Lockhart's magic points are at most used in his Universal Book Cafe. Outside, some wizards don't recognize them at all, let alone want to promote them. Unless the Supreme Master speaks, even the Supreme Master may not work, let alone anything else. How much value do the so-called magic points have? If there is no specific measurement standard, even Morin himself will not recognize it. The reason why gold can serve as currency is that it has a certain value in itself. If the magic points themselves have no value, then there is no possibility of them being used as currency. The thought flashed through his mind. Although Morin was not optimistic about Lockhart's behavior, he would not say much. He had lived for so many years and still understood the principle of talking about deep things with shallow friends. Although he had a good relationship with Lockhart, if he really intervened in his plan or advised him, it would only make the relationship between the two of them alienated. And based on his understanding of Lockhart, it would be useless. He was a very determined person, or a very stubborn person. It was difficult to change his mind. He could only wait until he hit a wall, and then it would be the time to persuade him. One stage can only do one stage of things, and this is true for making magic currency, and it is also true for persuading people. As the saying goes, a genius is half a step ahead, and a madman is one step ahead. Afterwards, Morin and Lockhart chatted about other topics, waiting for the arrival of Master David. While the two were chatting, suddenly, Morin saw Lockhart's expression move, as if he had received some information, and his expression was a little surprised. He looked at the still empty seat again, thought for a while, and said, "Lockhart, if you have other things to do, you can do them first. For Master David, you can write down your specific needs and I will tell him. I have a good relationship with him. It should be no problem for me to tell him. And I think he is probably immersed in his magic research now, and it is very likely that he has forgotten about this matter." Hearing this, Lockhart just passed the message to Vera through the golden dragon magic mark. Then, He smiled and said, "Don't worry, wait for Master David. Some things are more effective to communicate face to face." As he said, he poured tea for the two of them and sipped it slowly. Things are divided into priorities. Master David's matter is very important to him, and he will not miss it if he can't miss it. As for Captain America, wait for a while. If it really doesn't work, he will give in and apologize. He now has a bad impression of this Master David. He always likes to be punctual, and he will have a better impression of people who are punctual. After all, if he couldn't even keep time, how much could we trust his promises about the things that would be assigned to him later? At this moment, suddenly, a red flame portal opened, and a figure walked out of it. Chapter 207 The enemy appears. Bamboo Forest Tea House. At a tea table, Lockhart and Morin stared at the fat wizard David across from them. Lockhart had no expression on his face, while Morin had a gloomy face. As for Wizard David, he took a sip of tea with a smile and said slowly, "Master Lockhart, I suggest you carefully consider our suggestion. For an excellent alchemist and potion master like you, joining us is the best choice. For the future Universal Book Cafe, if we both unite, it will be of great benefit to everyone." After that, Wizard David drank the tea in the teacup, stood up, and said with a smile, "We look forward to your reply, Wizard Lockhart. After all, we are all wizards of Kamar-Taj now, and the relationship cannot be too stiff." At the end, the hint and threat in the words were self-evident. "What do you mean by being a wizard of Kamar-Taj now? Could it be that you can make me leave Kamar-Taj in the future?" Then, under Lockhart's gaze, Wizard David opened the portal and turned to leave. Bang! Morin took the teacup in his hand and put it heavily on the tea table in front of him, making a loud sound. Then, he said to Lockhart with an apologetic tone, "I'm sorry, Lockhart, I didn't expect that Dylan and his gang would do this to us, friends for so many years. We usually don't see each other when we look up, but we see each other when we look down." At the end, a wave of anger arose. "Damn, Dylan and his gang of bastards actually wanted to steal my cake." If it was just against Lockhart, Morin would at most feel a little sorry. But this time, it's not just against Lockhart. Even he and Cassilis have been targeted. To be precise, the other party is jealous. What does it mean to sell potions, follow the market price and negotiate together? What does it mean that unknown potions have potential hazards and need to be jointly identified by them, a group of potion masters, to be foolproof? Isn't this naked robbery? He has only been working with Lockhart for less than 2 months. What does the other party mean by this? Do they want to kick him out directly? Good guy, I didn't study alchemy and potions much before. I just heard about them a little and didn't think much about it. But I really encountered it. When he thought of this, Morin's anger surged. At this time, Lockhart, expressionless, looked at the angry Morin and sighed in his heart. Sure enough, what is coming will come. The first time I came to the Marvel world, I had just come into contact with Kamar-Taj and had no influence. In addition, I acted carefully, so everything went smoothly. The second time I came to the Marvel world, I joined Kamar-Taj and just cooperated with Morin and Cassilis. The impact was not big, or it had not yet fully fermented. The third time, I officially changed the Universal Book Cafe into a place for mages. In fact, it has affected many Kamar-Taj mages. The impact has begun to ferment and attracted attention. To be precise, it has affected the interests of some mages. Someone should jump out and fight to protect their own interests. Look, the Alchemist and Potion Master group headed by Dylan has already set their eyes on his Universal Book Cafe, as well as the potions and magic items in the Harry Potter world. Prepare to cooperate with him. First, form the Universal Book Cafe alliance with him, which is actually to divide up his Universal Book Cafe. Communicate with him about new potions and new magic items. In fact, it is because of his magic knowledge. You know, as promised, he has put the first batch of magic books in the wizarding world into the library. But these books have been carefully selected. The first batch are all relatively basic knowledge, and there are very few advanced ones. And basic knowledge itself is the essence of the wizarding world. But for an alchemist like Dylan, it may not mean much. Despite this, Lockhart believes that the other party can still see the wonders of magic in the Harry Potter world through basic knowledge. It is no surprise that greed arises. The same is true for his magic knowledge of Kamar-Taj. The thought flashed through his mind. Lockhart looked at Morin, who was still furious, and comforted him. Morin, don't worry, it won't have any big impact. We just need to do what we should do. Can they drive you, me, and Cassilis out of Kamar-Taj? Hearing Lockhart's comfort, Morin felt a little better and said coldly, if they dare, I will go directly to the Sorcerer Supreme. If something really happens, let's see what they say. What? They are allowed to sell potions, but we are not allowed to sell them. That's not the truth. I'm not afraid of them if we fight, let alone Cassilis. When the time comes, I can call Cassilis and beat the three of them alone. It won't be a problem. Hearing Morin's retaliatory words, Lockhart nodded helplessly. With the almost inaction of the Sorcerer Supreme, he might think they were just children playing tricks. It's good that he didn't watch the show and eat popcorn on the side. As long as no one was killed, or the matter did not get out of hand, Lockhart believed that the Supreme Sorcerer would not do anything. However, as for asking Cassilis for help, this was a very correct choice. Whether it was Cassilis' strength or his influence, they were both good in Kamar-Taj. The most important thing was that the three people had very close interests, and the other party's various behaviors would undoubtedly have an impact on the three people's potion business. Later, it would depend on how to communicate with Cassilis. At this moment, Morin's expression also calmed down. In fact, he had calmed down early. Part of his anger just now was really angry, and the other part was also covering up his embarrassment. The people he invited raised a knife and prepared to divide him up. This was really asking for death. Afterwards, the two sides discussed a few countermeasures and left now. People like Dallin were not just talking, they were not vague when it came to action. Vincian Book Cafe, Study Room 101. At this moment, Steve had been sitting on the stool with his eyes closed for an hour and a half. Although the time was a bit long, it was a piece of cake for him who had once laid motionless on the grass all night in order to kill the enemy. For him, as long as he could achieve the goal today, it didn't matter if he had to do it for another day, a week, or even a month. After seeing scene after scene not long ago, he had some confidence in what Carlson said. He hoped that this time, he could successfully achieve the goal and let Peggy recover her health and even return to her youth. Thoughts flashed through Steve's mind, and he calmed his inner thoughts and continued to close his eyes and wait. He still had some energy to nourish his ki. After a while, suddenly, Steve, with his keen perception, turned his head to the left, and then a familiar red color and a halo appeared again. Then a figure passed through the halo. At the same time, a voice came from his ear. Captain Steve, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for so long. Chapter 208. Everything you gain has to pay. Seeing the handsome blonde man in front of him, Steve silently compared his mind with the photo Carlson gave him, and at the same time, a gentle smile appeared on his face. Hello, are you Professor Lockhart? Lockhart looked at the slightly thin man in front of him, but he could vaguely feel the dangerous aura, and replied, yes, I'm Gilderoy Lockhart. Please sit down, Captain Steve. Lockhart gestured with his hand, and at the same time, the empty teacup on the desk began to rise tea automatically. Seeing this scene, Steve's eyes flashed with surprise, but after seeing Lockhart sitting opposite, he slowly sat down. Hello, Steve, can I call you Captain? Lockhart said gently, how have you been these past 70 years? Everyone thought you had died in the war. Of course, Professor Lockhart. Steve nodded, then shook his head and said, I'm very sorry, I just woke up recently, and I have no memory of these 70 years. Hearing this, Lockhart showed a regretful look. Then Captain, the world has changed a lot in these 70 years, you have to experience it well. Captain, I suggest you go online when you go back. Last time I saw a very good website that records the history of the United States for more than 200 years and the changes in various fields in the past 100 years, including technology, finance, medicine, music, movies and so on. The introduction is very detailed. It should be of great help to you. As he said, Lockhart stretched out his wand and tapped it lightly. In an instant, a piece of paper with the URL appeared in front of Steve, and then it fell steadily on the desk. Well, this URL is a website that Lockhart found before to verify the difference between the history of the Marvel world and the history he knew in his previous life. The introduction was very detailed, and at the same time, it also allowed Lockhart to understand the various events that had occurred on Earth in the Marvel world in the past few hundred years. It can be said that, although the general outline was the same, many events and many people had undergone significant changes. Steve saw the URL in front of him and took out a black notebook directly from his pocket and turned to the latest page. He copied down the URL and clipped the note in the notebook. He felt that, if what Lockhart said was true, then this URL might be of great help to him. God knows, he felt very confused about modern electronic devices and various screens. Many people gave him advice, asking him to watch certain movies, reports, or listen to songs. He wrote them down, but they all felt very fragmented. If he wanted to understand it systematically, it seemed that he still needed to go to the URL provided by Lockhart. Well, the professor is worthy of being a professor, and his advice is much more reliable than that given by ordinary people. He has also done some research on the so-called computer in recent times. At least, he can still open the web page. The time of copying passed very quickly, less than 10 seconds. Steve looked up and said gratefully, "Thank you, Professor Lockhart." Then, Lockhart chatted for a few more words and returned to the topic. "By the way, Captain, I heard from my students before that you want to restore human health or restore youth, right?" "Yes, Professor Lockhart." Steve nodded heavily and said, "I heard from Carlson that you may get help from you. I know that you advocate equal exchange. If you can achieve my goal, I will try my best to meet your price." Hearing this, Lockhart was thoughtful. I heard Vera talk about Steve's request before, and now after thinking carefully, I know who the target is. Who else can it be besides his girlfriend Peggy Carter? However, he has a lot of potions to restore health, and it is basically difficult to restore youth. There must be potions, but for ordinary people, I'm afraid that the other party will be blown to pieces by magic as soon as they drink it. After all, the gap between ordinary people and wizards is really not small. If they really want to drink it, it will either dilute or strengthen the other party's physical fitness. But when he thought of physical fitness, seeing Captain Steve Rogers at this time, Lockhart thought of the Super Soldier Serum, which can really improve physical fitness. Unfortunately, it was lost later, and it seems that only Steve has successfully integrated it. No, there is also a Red Skull from Hydra, but the side effects seem to be not small. It seems that Steve himself is special. With thoughts flashing, Lockhart slowly said, "Captain Steve, I have heard about your story, and I admire you very much. I will not refuse to provide you with potions to restore youth. But you have to know that these potions are prepared for mages, because mages have magic power to digest, and ordinary people are more likely to explode and die after drinking them." Hearing this, Steve's heart sank, and then he heard again, "As for the potion that can restore human health, that's okay." Having said that, Lockhart paused and said meaningfully, "However, there are still basic requirements for physical fitness. If it's an elderly person, she might just drink it, and before the potion takes effect, she would die from the energy explosion. After all, these potions were originally reserved for wizards, and wizards can absorb them well through magic power, but ordinary people can only absorb them instinctively through their physical fitness." Hearing this, Steve's face was gloomy. He felt that what Lockhart said was indeed very logical. "Then Captain Steve, can you talk to me about who is going to use the potion?" Lockhart asked gently. "Maybe I can provide some suggestions." Steve thought for a moment and said guiltily, "Professor Lockhart, I want to use it for my ex-girlfriend Peggy Carter. I missed her for 70 years. During these 70 years, my appearance has not changed because of the freezing. But for her, time is passing every minute and every second. She is now an old man who is almost 100 years old." Hearing this, Lockhart nodded slowly and then began to prepare to show his true colors. "In this case, Miss Carter is indeed old. If you want to use the potion, you can only dilute it, and these must be adjusted according to her physical strength. If you are willing, you can bring Miss Carter to my side, and I will adjust it according to her physical condition." At the same time, the environment here is more nourishing and more suitable for the elderly to live in. Captain Steve, what do you think? Steve was a little stunned. He was ready to give up, but after listening to Professor Lockhart, he still had a chance. Thoughts turned. Steve immediately said, "Okay, Professor Lockhart, I'll bring Carter here when I get back." Well, S.H.I.E.L.D. has to do it, even if it doesn't want to. Hearing what Steve said, Lockhart nodded slightly, and then said slowly, "Yes, I have told you what I can do. Although I admire your past, according to my principle, everything you gain must be paid. There are some things I also need your help. To be more precise, the help of you and Ms. Carter. For example, my students lack practical experience, so I may need your help in training. Also, as the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D., Ms. Carter has rich experience in organizations, and I also want her to help train some of my students." Chapter 209, Batch Construction of Small Wizarding Organizations. Wangxiang Book Cafe, Study Room 101. Gold, help me send Captain Steve off. As Lockhart waved his hand gently, the house elf Gold quietly appeared. Steve looked at the strange creature Gold who was waving his hand to him, and said to Lockhart in a deep voice, "Professor Lockhart, I'll leave first. We will definitely consider what you said." And Lockhart nodded gently, to show that he understood, and then watched Steve's figure leaving, with a faint smile on his face. For Steve and Carter, the two requests he made were almost impossible to refuse. After all, it was just coming here every day to teach his students and conduct certain training. There was nothing difficult about it. It was not to ask Steve to donate blood, nor was it to ask Carter to kill the enemy and give a lecture. As for Captain America's blood, he would have a chance to get it after the two of them had a good relationship. For Lockhart, he finally solved the two important things in his heart. He had high expectations for his 3 students. These were seeds, and they could not grow crooked. As long as the seeds grew up and grew well, they could provide him with more good seedlings in the future. Now Lockhart's strength can only be said to be growing slowly, and he has not found the outbreak point or bottleneck. So the only thing he has to pay attention to now is to cultivate the power of new wizards. The collision of the new and old magic systems in the wizarding world later cannot be separated from them. What he can do is actually the limit now. The meditation method given to him, the allocation of resources, help them grow, and provide a good environment for them to exercise. In order to improve their actual combat ability, they even identified their enemies the hand. However, he is not omnipotent. In terms of actual combat, it is okay for him to teach magic, but when it comes to close combat, he is a bit of a muggle. Although he has gained Thor's combat experience, Thor's experience is formed by combining his own strong physical fitness and talent. He can only learn from some fighting experience. As long as he fully accepts it, it is a death. Could it be that he still fights the wizard with a hammer? Just thinking about such a picture is funny. Being in the Marvel world, close combat is inevitable, and even if you want to overtake in the Harry Potter world, close combat training is also very important. He was hesitating whether to discuss with Cassilis and ask him to help train his students in melee combat. As a result, a captain with rich melee combat experience came out. At this time, he felt a little sorry for himself if he didn't get some wool. As for Captain Carter, it was an unexpected surprise. He had already begun to think about how to build a small organization with new wizards as the core in batches. It is convenient for them to bloom everywhere in the Harry Potter world, recruit squibs or wizards with low talents, and greatly expand the influence of the new magic system. After all, the most core indicator of a product is to expand its user base. When most of the wizards in the entire wizarding world practice the new magic system, the group of purebloods may not be able to stop it. The matter is done, and there is nothing to do. And he will not rely solely on publishing papers, writing books, and calling for promotion in newspapers. This is too inefficient, too easy to be targeted, and the quality is not necessarily good. Direct promotion, let his students organize wizards to study together, and promote in efficient manner. Through this set of dimensionality reduction attack, he didn't believe that the group of pureblood families with rigid brains could take it. He was afraid that when their brains were confused, his plan was almost half successful. However, his idea was very good. The only difficulty was that he had no relevant experience at all. In his previous life, he could only teach students and do research himself. He had only heard about this kind of promotion similar to fission and even pyramid selling, but had never seen it. Some details could only be imagined. Lockhart had seen how outrageous laymen could do things. He had never thought that it would be too stupid to start doing it when his head was hot. Therefore, his plan had been buried in his heart and constantly improved. He was even ready to find some special experts to discuss it. As a result, Steve ran to him with Peggy Carter. As one of the founders of SHIELD, her organizational experience really needs no mention. SHIELD is his greatest achievement. This large-scale agent organization spread all over the world has survived to this day, and its influence is still not weak, which can be seen. Although there is Hydra in the middle, these organizations are indeed hidden very deeply. Who would have thought that an extinct organization would revive? In general, judging from the experience of building an organization, Peggy Carter is definitely the best. Later, he wants to build a real large-scale wizard organization, and Peggy Carter may play a big role. As for whether the two may leak secrets, don't forget what Lockhart does. Isn't the magic contract good? Is memory magic just for show? As for brainwashing students, it's just a class, not staying together every day. If they brainwash them in class, then Lockhart gave them a lot of classes, and they met every day. It goes without saying who has a stronger brainwashing power. Besides, the Golden Dragon magic mark is not just a painting for fun. There are a lot of memories and cognitive magic hidden in it. While constantly thinking, Lockhart gradually perfected the plan of the two. He didn't believe that with these two top talents in their respective fields as teachers, they couldn't teach their students. Now everything is ready, only the east wind is missing. SHIELD, Director's Office. What? Are you sure what the captain said is true? Nick Fury asked Coulson in front of him with some surprise. Yes, Director, the captain said so. Now all we need is Ms. Carter's consent. Coulson nodded and said with some joy. Seeing this, Nick Fury quickly calmed down, tapped the table with his fingers, and fell into deep thought. Originally, according to the advice of his old boss, he used Captain America to obtain more information about the wizard professor. In order to ensure the success of the operation, he never asked Captain America to do anything, and even did not give any hints, leaving him completely unaware. He did not forget that the wizard professor had the means to play with people's memories. And with Captain America's reputation and his upright heart, few people can refuse to be friends with such a person. Unless the other party is an evil organization like Hydra, they will not easily refuse the captain's friendship. Captain America's emphasis on friends has been witnessed in history. As long as they become friends, he can get more information from Captain America later, and even pull him to his own camp. Captain America's infectious charm has been witnessed in history. Nick Fury believed that the captain, who was determined in his position, would definitely stand on the side of the United States, and on his side. After a flash of thought, Nick Fury asked Coulson again. Coulson, you just said that Miss Carter was unwilling. Did Steve tell you the specific reason? The captain mentioned this point. Coulson said, Ms. Carter said that she didn't want to cause trouble to everyone anymore. Just let her live out her life in peace. Hearing this, Nick Fury lowered his head and thought for a while. To be honest, it was a bit unkind to let his old boss come out to work at this age. But there was no way. If Ms. Carter didn't move, the captain couldn't move either. Wouldn't all his plans be over? So, he had to do it himself. He didn't have too much psychological burden. After all, his identity as the head of the spy organization was here. He might have some guilt, but it was definitely very light. Besides, this matter itself was a good thing for Carter and the captain. If Ms. Carter returned to her youthful state, Nick Fury would be more confident in influencing the captain. Nick Fury said to Coulson as he thought to himself, tell the captain that I will be here to talk to Ms. Carter. Just let him prepare for the next practical training. Whatever you need, SHIELD can provide it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210 Steve, I'm willing to dance with you for the rest of my life. Los Angeles, the bedroom of Ms. Carter's villa. On the big bed in the middle of the bedroom, Steve gently held the right hand of the old Carter on the bed and comforted him. Carter, relax. I will make up for the dance you owe me after you recover. And, as long as you are willing, I'm willing to dance with you for the rest of my life. After hearing this, Carter's old face faintly showed a smile, nodded gently, and closed her eyes silently, as if waiting for something. But looking at her chest that kept rising and falling, you can still see the excitement in her heart. At this moment, Coulson stood by, holding a folded shirt in his hand, a little at a loss. This time he specially took a Captain America shirt that he had collected for a long time, ready to ask the captain to sign. Seeing this scene, he felt that he was standing here. Was it a bit redundant? If he asked for an autograph at this time, would he be beaten? Thinking of this, Coulson could only silently put the shirt in his hand behind his back, trying to cover it as much as possible, and at the same time a little further away, for fear of disturbing this picture. As for Nick Fury, after persuading his old boss, he turned and left. The excuse he used was a bit unkind. So, he thought, let's wait until the old boss recovers, before continuing the conversation. At this moment, suddenly, a red flame portal quietly emerged, and then Lockhart walked out of it. Professor Lockhart, good morning. After seeing it, Coulson hurried over and greeted him. Good morning, Coulson. Lockhart nodded slightly, and then looked at the other's hair, which was slightly thicker and glossier than last time, and nodded with satisfaction. It seems that the shampoo is effective, but the time is a bit short. After a while, we should be able to see a Coulson who is not bald. It is indeed a well-known brand, but it's a pity that Snape can't use it. I just don't know if he is full of hostility to any shampoo out of anger at James Potter, so he doesn't even use it. Otherwise, why is his hair always so greasy? Coulson noticed Lockhart's gaze, and a hint of joy flashed in his eyes. This time he did a good job of keeping secrets, and those bastards in the research department didn't know. I hope I can keep it a secret later. Also, it's better to have less work, otherwise I'll be out again. After the two greeted each other for a few words, Lockhart turned his attention to Steve and Peggy Carter. Steve, I'll take you to my place now. It's more convenient for Ms. Carter to recuperate here, Lockhart said to Steve with a smile. Okay, thank you, Professor Lockhart, Steve said gratefully. Then, Lockhart looked at the man lying on the big bed, with a breathing mask on his face and some medical equipment beside him. After a little thought, he gently waved his wand, and in an instant, a large red flame-colored halo appeared. Then, it began to move towards Steve and Carter. Soon, the halo engulfed the two, including Ms. Carter's big bed and the nearby medical equipment. Then, Lockhart said to Coulson, who was surprised next to him, Coulson, let's not talk about it in detail this time. We'll talk next time, when we have a chance. As he said that, Lockhart stepped into the portal in front of him, and the portal disappeared quietly, leaving Coulson alone in the room. Seeing this, Coulson took the Captain America shirt in his hand. A bitter smile flashed across his face, took out his phone, and called his director. Director, the captain and Ms. Carter have left and entered Professor Lockhart's home. Well, he just roughly glanced at the portal screen, and there must be a bedroom inside. The interior space of the magic suitcase, the bedroom. The magic suitcase can be regarded as Lockhart's mobile base camp. Naturally, it has been carefully arranged. There are not only lawns, valleys, and rivers for magical creatures to live, including spell training rooms, libraries, bedrooms, etc. for wizards to use. It can be said that after Lockhart's careful layout, this can basically be regarded as the headquarters of a medium-sized wizard organization. It can accommodate up to 1,000 people, and magical animals can also live. Well, the most important thing is that Lockhart ordered, and Jinbe and Bruno did it. It must be said that house elves are capable, and even Bruno was stimulated to work hard. Lockhart decided that next time he returns to the Harry Potter world, he must buy a few more house elves, if he has the chance. At that time, let the gold coin be the leader and command the other house elves to work. It can also be regarded as a reward for the gold coin's hard work. At this moment, Steve, Carter, and the big bed appeared in an empty bedroom. Steve quickly observed the surrounding environment and found that the air around him was indeed the same as the previous book cafe, very pleasant. Even Carter's old face showed a comfortable expression, which made Steve slightly happy. As long as it works, Carter can't get into trouble again. Then, through the window not far away, I saw the bright sunlight outside and the green lawn. I wondered where it was. At this moment, a portal opened and Lockhart appeared in front of the two. "Excuse me, Professor Lockhart." Steve stood up and said to Lockhart, regarding the treatment of Carter, "What do I need to do now?" "Steve, you don't need to do anything for the treatment for the time being. You can walk outside or watch from the side. I will check Ms. Carter's physical condition first and then see how to restore her health and make her as young as possible," Lockhart said softly to Steve. Hearing Lockhart's words, Steve nodded and took a step back, fearing to disturb Lockhart. Standing near the wall, he watched how Lockhart treated Carter. Seeing this, Lockhart stretched out his wand, walked to the bed, and looked at the large number of medical instruments beside him, as well as the breathing mask on Carter's face. With a gentle wave, all irrelevant medical instruments, including the breathing mask, floated in the air and fell to the side. Then, looking at Carter's gaze and old face, he smiled gently, stretched out his wand, and lightly pointed at his forehead. In an instant, a weak magic power flowed from his arm into the wand, and then into Carter's body. Steve only saw a faint white light flash from Carter's forehead, and then there was no movement. After a while, Lockhart received the feedback information brought by the magic power and frowned slightly. As expected of an agent for many years, this body has suffered a lot of damage, and even some traces of drugs can be seen, which have a destructive effect on certain muscles and internal organs of the body. But this is not a difficult task for Lockhart. Waving the magic wand, a series of light green lines were drawn in the air. Under Steve's gaze, a strange rune pattern slowly formed. As the rune pattern was completed, with a bang, the rune pattern broke, and a large amount of light blue gas was generated, which turned into water droplets and fell down. Healing magic, rain from the sky. Continue 5 updates today, and update later. Chapter 211 Flesh and Blood Magic Life Burning. Under Lockhart's control, all the light blue water droplets were completely immersed in Ms. Carter's body. Carter, who was originally a little pale, became rosy with naked eyes. Feeling that some of the larger injuries in Carter's body began to slowly recover, Lockhart nodded slightly. After a while, Lockhart felt that the magic effect was almost there, and Carter's body condition was temporarily stable. At least she would not die suddenly due to some spells. So he raised the wand and gently touched Carter's eyebrows. In an instant, a dazzling white light bloomed around. Then, it suddenly shrank, covering Carter's entire body, and then slowly floated in the air. Under Steve's gaze, Carter's body moved with the movement of the wand, and soon, she stood in front of Lockhart, her feet slightly floating, about 5 centimeters above the ground. Seeing Carter in front of him, Lockhart looked at her calmly and reminded her, "Ms. Carter, if anything unusual happens later, don't panic. Everything is normal." Seeing the other party nod gently, Lockhart held the ring in his hand, infused magic power, and a dense red flame rune appeared on the palm of his right hand. Then, Lockhart waved his hand and hit Carter's forehead directly. Magic soul projection. Snap. In an instant, Carter felt that he suddenly took a step back heavily. Then, he felt his body lighten, and the soreness and weakness of his muscles disappeared, as if he was alive again. The next moment, he saw his body standing in front of Lockhart, raised his hand, and found that his whole body was transparent, like a soul. "Ms. Carter, you are in a soul state now. Don't make a fuss. After I restore your body, I will help your soul return to its place. Now, you can walk around this room slowly by yourself, but don't go too far." Lockhart's voice came to his ears, and Carter nodded subconsciously. Then, recalling what Lockhart said, his eyes were full of surprise. He was in a soul state now, no wonder he didn't feel powerless as before, and he felt very light. This is the soul. Carter raised his hands again, looked at his arms in the soul state, and his eyes were once more inquiring. Sure enough, just as Nick Fury said, this wizard professor has a deep attainment in memory and mind, which made his soul out of his body, and his level is really not low. The next moment, as if he thought of something, he exhaled with relief. Now Nick Fury is the boss of S.H.I.E.L.D. Why does she think so much? She has retired, just accompany Steve well. Then, Carter looked at Steve, who was looking at his body not far away, and slowly floated over. Walking to the opposite side, seeing the undisguised concern in the other's eyes, Carter gently touched Steve's face with some pity. 70 years. What kind of experience is it for Steve to wake up and spend 70 years? This era is very different from the World War II period. During World War II, although the situation was chaotic, the positions were clear, and it was easy to tell who was the enemy and who was the comrade. Now, although the surface is peaceful, the internal turmoil is greater than at any other time. Who dares to say whether it is an enemy or a friend? For an upright warrior like Steve, if he is not careful, he may be crushed to pieces. Even his bones may be swallowed up. As Nick Fury said, Steve's existence itself is enough to arouse the greed of politicians, capitalists, and the military. At this moment, Steve suddenly felt a chill on his face and looked around vigilantly, but found that there was nothing unusual. Only Lockhart was waving his wand not far away, and Carter was emitting a light golden light. At this moment, Lockhart noticed that Carter's soul was silently staring at Steve. After thinking for a while, he reminded her, "Carter, now you can recall your appearance when you were young, and your soul will be transformed to your state when you were young. At the same time, wait a moment, I will materialize your soul. You and Steve can see each other and chat, but you still can't touch each other. And you, Steve, don't make a fuss when you see Carter in her soul state later. Just chat carefully there, don't disturb me." Well, Carter is a good research subject. You know, in other parallel universes, she has also been Captain America. Just now, after some exploration, it was found that this body's energy absorption efficiency is obviously easier than that of ordinary people. In other words, her absorption efficiency of magic power and potions is higher, the risk is lower, and it is easier to produce effects. This made Lockhart quite interested in his heart, and he took this opportunity to study it carefully. In short, once the two of them get tired of each other, it is easy to ignore the passage of time. After hearing this, Steve and Carter flashed a hint of surprise in their eyes, and they were full of expectations. Carter recalled the scene when he met Steve when he was young, and soon found that the surface of his soul had changed, as if he had returned to his youth. Then, he suddenly noticed that Steve was looking at him with a look of surprise, and he immediately understood that Steve could see himself in his soul state. Then, Carter smiled brightly, as if he had returned to the first time he met Steve 70 years ago. "Steve, hello, I'm Peggy Carter." At this moment, Lockhart saw the two of them showing off their love, so he turned his head and continued to pay attention to Carter's body. Now some minor injuries to his body have been restored, and some physical diseases have been cured. It is no problem to live another 5 years. The only thing to consider now is how to further restore Carter's appearance. This is a difficult problem. To restore Carter's body to his youth, such as the heart, kidneys, brain and other important organs. It is difficult, unless he has a lot of vitality. However, other means are not impossible, but they are just superficial work. Carter's specific lifespan is still only about 5 years, or even shorter, and he will still die after that. The thought flashed through his mind, and Lockhart made a decision in his heart. Soon, he waved his wand, and purple-red light emerged and sank into Carter's body. Then, under Lockhart's gaze, every blood vessel on Carter's body began to emit purple-red marks. The entire body was covered with a large number of purple-red lines. And as time passed, they became more and more shining, as if consuming something and stimulating something. At the same time, Lockhart took out several bottles of magic potion and put them into Carter's mouth under control, as if to make up for some of the losses. It can be seen with the naked eye that Carter's originally shriveled body gradually swelled up, and his old skin gradually regained its blood color, and even became white, tender, and smooth, like a baby. The wrinkles on his face slowly disappeared, replaced by rosy lips, delicate face, and bright eyes. Flesh and blood magic, life burning. Chapter 212, Ms. Carter and Captain America. Flesh magic. It is a relatively rare type of magic in Kamar-Taj. At first, Lockhart didn't know about it, but later Cassilis saw that Lockhart's melee ability was too ordinary. He joked that he could learn some flesh magic to temporarily increase his physical fitness and resist more. Of course, it was just a joke at the time, but Lockhart kept it in mind. Later, he specifically looked for some relevant information and found that flesh magic was indeed a niche and was even rejected by many wizards. Because this type of magic is a study of the human body, once the researcher's will is not firm, it is easy to go astray. The road to dark magic is gone forever. After knowing this, he gave up the idea of studying flesh magic in depth. Family members still know their own business. With his own personality, if he studied it this way, he would definitely do dark magic, and he would not be able to escape. His bright future now is not worth ruining his reputation for some dark magic. However, he specifically learned some flesh magic to strengthen physical fitness and burn life. In Lockhart's eyes, burning life is actually a trump card to save his life. Facing a powerful enemy, he would directly burn his life in exchange for powerful strength. For Carter, if he wanted to directly return her to youth, Lockhart would have to pay too much. But Lockhart could still restore her body to its peak state. The core was to use the flesh and blood magic of burning life, or more precisely, to burn the life transformed by burning life. Burning life in exchange for instant strength. And burning life is a continuous exchange for peak state. Generally speaking, the stronger the strength, the greater the consumption of burning life. After all, their peak state is really strong. But for Carter, he is just an ordinary person, and his physical fitness is at most a little better than others. So, relatively speaking, the consumption is much lower, and with the supplement of potions, the consumption is further reduced. Despite this, Carter was originally expected to have a lifespan of 5 years, but now maintaining this state, at most it will only be about a year. However, for Lockhart, this is not a difficult problem to solve. Just replenish enough vitality, and Lockhart knows several ways to obtain vitality. He is even working hard on one of them, and I believe that the results will be revealed after a while. The limited time is also an important way for Lockhart to influence Carter. Lockhart didn't believe it. The two of them were in love, and seeing that his man could live for decades, while he could only live for another year. Now there is a chance for them to love each other, until they grow old. Can Carter give up? Even if Carter really gives up, can the captain give up? The thought flashed through his mind, and Lockhart looked at the artwork he made with his own hands with admiration. It must be said that the young Carter is really very feminine. With fair skin, high nose bridge, rosy lips, and short wavy hair, she looks particularly capable and elegant. If she wears a military uniform, she will be heroic. Then, Lockhart stretched out his wand again and gently touched Carter's brow. The next moment, a light golden dragon magic brand quietly emerged and sank into the forehead. At the same time, sensing the feedback information brought by the brand, Lockhart nodded slightly. This magic was very successful. Next, there is only one step left. Just now, he was afraid that casting flesh and blood magic would affect Carter's soul, but now he doesn't have that worry. Seeing the two people behind him still showing off their love, Lockhart shook his head helplessly, waved his wand lightly, controlled Carter's body, and floated behind him. Then he slowly walked in front of the two people. "Steve, I'm borrowing Ms. Carter for a while. Wait a minute, I'll give you a complete version of Peggy Carter," Lockhart said jokingly. Steve looked at the familiar face behind Lockhart, his expression trembling, not knowing how to express his emotions. Finally, he said gratefully, "Thank you, Lockhart." Seeing this, Lockhart smiled and nodded. Then he joked to Carter's soul, "Ms. Carter, return to your body now, and then you can talk to the captain about your heart." Carter saw the familiar face and looked back at the young captain again, as if recalling the things when he was young, closing his eyes, as if calming down his inner excitement. After a while, he nodded at Lockhart, walked towards his own body step by step, and entered it. Heavy, sore, but full of energy. This is the feeling of youth. With his eyes closed, Carter keenly felt the pleasant air and smell around him, as well as the blood and vigorous energy. Even his thinking speed has obviously returned to his peak state. His brain thinks quickly recalls the things he encountered in the past few days, one by one, quickly sorts them out, and prioritizes them. Minor problems that were not noticed before quickly emerged in his mind, and he judged a series of flaws only by subconsciously, including some loopholes in Nick Fury's words to persuade her. This feeling of being at ease has not been experienced again for a long time, and it can be said to be full of enjoyment. Soon. Whoosh. Carter exhaled a breath of turbid air, opened his eyes, and looked at Lockhart with gratitude. Then, looking at Steve standing beside him, a bright smile appeared on his face. He stretched out his energetic arms and hugged Steve tightly. Then a passionate deep kiss. Lockhart watched the two forcibly feeding him dog food, smiled, stepped back a few steps, and whispered, "Gold coin." Instantly, the house elf gold coin appeared in front of Lockhart. Gold coin. Take them to their own room to live later. Lockhart thought for a moment, and added, "Forget it, just find them a room." Well, he would not disturb the good things between the captain and Carter. "Okay, master." Gold coin replied loudly. Gold coin's voice and strange appearance attracted the attention of Stephen Carter. Seeing this, Lockhart directly reminded, "Steve Carter, I will not disturb you. If you have anything, just tell Gold coin directly, he will meet your needs. You should rest first. I haven't seen you for many years. I believe you must have a lot to say. Then, in 3 days, the three of us will talk in detail." After saying that, without waiting for the two to reply, he waved his wand directly, drew a portal, and left this room full of dog food. After seeing Lockhart leave, the two looked at each other and smiled at the same time. "Carter, this time, let's make up for the dance we owe." In the New York temple, Cassilis and Morin sat at a table and chatted. There were 3 teacups on the table, 2 of which were filled with tea for Cassilis and Morin to enjoy. In addition, there was an empty teacup, and corresponding to it, there was an empty chair. It was obvious that Cassilis and Morin were waiting for someone else. At this moment, suddenly, a red flame halo portal appeared, and Lockhart stepped out of it. Looking at the two friends sitting in front of him, waiting for him, Lockhart sat down, poured himself a cup of tea, and said in a deep voice, "Cassilis, Morin, what do you think about what Master David said? Thanks to Blade Killing, CXSJ, Hey Gang Leo Chen, Fat Leo Man, Silent Sai, Book Friend 2018018922092427 Dex Mighty, Book Friend 2018071007394448, Unscrupulous Element, We Love Yu and Jechangai for their monthly votes. Chapter 213 Enemies from Kamar-Taj. Lockhart, the potion business must continue. This is the consensus between the two of us, Cassilis said softly. Morin next to him nodded in agreement and said, "We can't give up, just because of a few words from them, or do what they say. This will only make them get more aggressive, and even other mages will look down on us. Kamar-Taj is not big, but it's not small either. Some things will soon be known to all mages, and by then, our reputation will be ruined." Hearing this, Lockhart also nodded and said, "Okay, everyone understands what I mean. I mean the same as you. I can't give up the potion business, let alone give up the Universal Book Cafe." Then, Lockhart asked the two of them with some confusion, "Cassilis, Morin, I joined Kamar-Taj not long ago, and they don't know much about Master David. Would you mind telling me in detail?" Hearing Lockhart's request, Morin thought for a while and said, "Lockhart, I specifically asked someone about the leading wizard and his friends. It was found that most of them are alchemists and potion masters. It can basically be said that they monopolize the potion and alchemy market of the entire Kamar-Taj before. It's just that they act more covertly. After all, with the supreme sorcerer here, they dare not be arrogant. They just communicate privately to fix the price of potions or magic items within a range. In this way, they can obtain a large amount of magical resources through the technology they master. They will win over every alchemist or potion maker to ensure that their status will not be affected. And you, Lockhart, have just joined Kamar-Taj, but you have come up with so many novel potions. The impact on them is very big. At this point, Marine also smiled bitterly and said, "This is my fault for not investigating it in advance. I even thought about introducing Master David to you." Hearing this, Lockhart nodded slowly, thought for a while, and asked, "I have a question. How does Kamar-Taj generally deal with disputes between mages?" Cassilis pondered for a moment and said, "Generally speaking, regarding disputes between mages, if it is impossible to judge whether it is right or wrong, then they will fight." At this point, Cassilis hesitated, as if he didn't know whether to say or not. Seeing this, Lockhart was a little confused and asked, "Cassilis, if you have any questions, just tell us, and we can solve them." Hearing Lockhart's question, Cassilis sighed and said in a deep voice, "Lockhart, actually, a fight is the best solution for us. I still understand your fighting ability, but the problem is that the other party may not fight head on, but will do something behind our backs, which is more troublesome. For example, they use some relationships to restrict others from trading with us, or spread some rumors about our potions. Or, Lockhart, they directly tell some wizards not to go to your Vincian book cafe anymore. What can we do?" Hearing this, Lockhart had a headache. Since ancient times, soft knives may be more effective than hard knives. Especially now that they are in Kamar-Taj, with the Supreme Sorcerer in charge. The existence of the Supreme Sorcerer can be said to have both advantages and disadvantages. On the one hand, the other party dare not be too arrogant, but on the other hand, Lockhart and his men cannot do anything behind the scenes. Don't forget that the Supreme Master controls the power of time. If you want to use some hidden tricks in private, you may not be able to escape the eyes of the Supreme Master. It's okay for everyone to fight, but life-threatening situations must not be allowed. In this case, Lockhart can only block the opponent's soft knife. As if knowing Lockhart's troubles, Cassilis comforted him. "Lockhart, don't worry. The situation is not bad now. I'm in charge of the New York temple. They dare not be so arrogant. Morin also has some friends who are ascetics. Our business may be affected, but if it continues, the other party will have no choice. At most, the business will be sluggish for a period of time. It's just that you need to pay more attention to this aspect." Hearing this, Lockhart nodded, indicating that he understood what Cassilis meant. He and the Universal Book Cafe are the main targets of the other party. On the one hand, he is the provider of magic potions. As long as the other party solves himself, it is equivalent to solving the problem from the source. On the other hand, the Universal Book Cafe now has a large area, and he has joined Kamar-Taj for less than 2 months, so his influence is relatively average. It is too easy for the other party to target him. He was the weakest link among the three. After all, his foundation was not solid, unlike Cassilis who guarded the entire New York temple. Moreover, as the instructor of the new mages of Kamar-Taj, his influence was not weak. And Morin, as a librarian, had many friends. Even the mage David had a good relationship with him before there was no conflict of interest. Therefore, David and his group would not easily target Cassilis and Morin, as it would be thankless. Therefore, the other party might directly attack him. While he was not deeply rooted, and his roots were not solid, Lockhart thought about it from his perspective. If he did not attack, he would be a bit sorry for himself. With his thoughts turning, Lockhart had a rough plan in his mind. Afterwards, Lockhart discussed with Cassilis and Morin to see if there were other solutions. After finding that there was no good solution, he shook his head helplessly. Now he was in the open, and the other party was in the dark. He could only fight against the enemy and cover the water. He could only solve the problem when he encountered it, and even have the possibility of counterattack. As the three of them continued to communicate, a general idea of how to deal with it had emerged. From now on, it depends on how the other party will attack. The interior space of the magic suitcase, the lawn outside. Goo goo. The bull escaped bird felt very bad. It found that it seemed to have been forgotten again. Since the snake came into being, the keeper has obviously paid more attention to the snake than to itself. Moreover, since the last time it and the keeper entered a place called Wangxiang Book Cafe, didn't it just act cute to some people and ask for some food? Later, the keeper didn't let it go anymore. It kept it in the suitcase all day long and asked it to run, and didn't let it eat delicious food. Well, it was mainly because Lockhart brought Gugu into the Wang Xiang book cafe before, and Gugu's cute face attracted the love of many wizards. As a result, Gugu used his old habit again, asking for food. This is very handy for a foodie who relies purely on acting cute. Then Gugu became fat again, which made Lockhart a little helpless. This is a pure foodie, and I have a lot of things to do. I have to study and do magic research every day, and I can't manage it at all. I want to let the gold coin take care of it. After trying it for a day, I found that the effect is still good, but it is obvious that the gold coin can't do anything else all day, just staring at Gugu. This won't work. Gold coin is now his right-hand man. How can he take care of his pet all day long? Everyone else has their own things to do, including Lockhart. He wants to supervise Gugu, but there is no manpower at all. In the end, Lockhart can only solve the problem from the root and let Gugu stay at home, or in the suitcase. Only by keeping a fixed amount of food every day, the body size will not continue to grow. Gugu. Walking on the lawn again, Gugu said that he was very unhappy. He wanted to go out, to play and eat delicious food. Unfortunately, ding, ding, ding. Gugu shook the collar on his neck and was very angry when he heard the ding ding sound. The bastard breeder actually restricted his ability again. He couldn't go out, even if he wanted to. Ding, ding, puff, puff. As soon as he heard the ding ding sound, Gugu shook his wings unhappily and rolled on the ground, as if he wanted to get rid of the collar quickly. Gugu, who was rolling on the ground, suddenly saw two strange figures appearing on the lawn. Hey, are there other people in his territory again? Why didn't the breeder tell him? So, do they not know him either? Gugu looked at the two figures hugging each other with some curiosity. He shook the collar on his neck, and his two little eyes lit up. He waved his wings excitedly, as if he had thought of a good idea in his mind. P.S. Dear readers, please support me. The data has dropped in recent days. It's so bad. Please vote and subscribe. Dear readers, please support me for my efforts to write as soon as Xingchen got up in the morning. The data has dropped so badly. It's really easy to kill a book. If you think it's not well written in any aspect, please point it out. I will try my best to optimize it. Chapter 214, Smart Gugu's Escape. Carter, how have you been these years? Steve sat on the lawn, hugged Carter, and asked in a low voice, while looking at the beautiful scenery in the distance. For me, these years have been very wonderful. Carter's face revealed a trace of emotion, and he rested his head on Steve's shoulder intimately, and said slowly, not long after you left, Howard had an accident, but fortunately, all the problems were solved. Later, we founded the Strategic Danger Intervention and Intelligence Logistics Office together, which is the predecessor of the current SHIELD. Later Steve listened to Carter's light-hearted description of his experiences over the years, and subconsciously hugged Carter tightly. Although he sounded as if it was very simple and there was no big problem, how could he not hear the bloody storm in it? In their era, women have always suffered discrimination. Carter and Howard were able to create SHIELD at that time. Needless to say, the difficulties in the middle, he could sense Carter's difficulties at that time. However, hearing the proud tone in Carter's words, he felt sad and proud. Sadly, he was absent from all the hardships that Carter had gone through. Proudly, he knew that Carter was a proud woman, and he was happy for her to achieve such an achievement. In the late 1980s, the Strategic Danger Intervention and Intelligence Logistics Office faced transformation, and later the name was officially changed to the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency. Among them, I also retired, and Howard died in a car accident. Later, Alexander Pierce and Nick Fury took over my position. Hearing this, Steve was stunned for a moment, frowned and asked, Carter, what happened to Howard? Did I hear it right? Carter looked at Steve's frown, raised his thin hand, slowly smoothed it, and said softly, yes, you just woke up not long ago, you don't know much. Howard did die in a car accident. Hearing this, Steve sighed. In the past 70 years, how many friends have either died or disappeared, like his good friend Bucky, who even had an accident before he fell asleep. Now, the only person he knows is Carter. Thinking of this, Steve hugged Carter tightly, fearing that she would leave him again. Carter heard Steve sighing slightly, and suddenly said, Steve, promise me. Don't worry about SHIELD in the future and try to meet Nick Fury as little as possible. How about that? As he said that, he held Steve's face with both hands and stared at him closely. When Steve heard Carter's request, he was stunned for a moment, and his intuition told him that there must be something wrong. But seeing Carter's bright eyes mixed with a hint of pleading, his heart softened, and he was about to nod and agree. Suddenly, go, go, go. Hearing the sound coming from his ear, Steve's attention shifted, and he looked to the left. What came into view was a cute creature with fluffy dark blue hair, a pair of small blue wings on both sides of the body, and a silver-white collar hanging around its neck, similar to a dodo bird. Especially the other part, his eyes, which seemed like sapphires, made people particularly fond of them. After seeing this, Carter also revealed surprise in his eyes. Women, even when they are old, will have a love for cute things. Goo-goo. Goo-goo. Seeing the two, especially Carter, Goo-goo ran forward excitedly, the small collar on his neck jingling. Well, according to his experience, women are the easiest to talk to. There are a lot of delicious food, and some of his requests are hard to refuse. Carter saw Goo-goo running forward, stretching out his wings, and gently flapping his thighs. Feeling the tingling sensation on his thighs, a faint smile rose on his face, and he reached out and gently stroked the other's furry dark blue hair. Goo-goo, on the other hand, jumped directly into Carter's arms, and rubbed his head intimately. Steve, who was next to him, saw the intimate interaction between Carter and Goo-goo, and a bright smile appeared on his face. Then, he looked at the silver-white collar on Goo-goo's neck with interest. Obviously, this cute thing is Professor Lockhart's pet. Generally speaking, only pets will wear collars. Steve hugged Carter, gently lifted the collar on Goo-goo's neck with his fingers, and carefully looked at the words on it. After seeing the words clearly, Steve laughed softly. Goo-goo, I want to lose weight. Please don't throw food at me. Obviously, this is what Professor Lockhart wrote on the collar. It seems that this pet has been fed a lot of food. Otherwise, Professor Lockhart would not have specifically reminded this. Is your name Goo-goo? Carter also saw the handwriting on the collar, and a smile rose on his face. He held Goo-goo in his hands, raised it in front of him, and asked softly, Goo-goo. Goo-goo, feeling the collar on his neck being lifted, Goo-goo nodded excitedly, indicating that his name was indeed this. When the two looked at Goo-goo, as if he could understand what they said, a trace of surprise flashed in their eyes. But then they thought of Lockhart's identity, and were a little surprised. Then, Carter said tentatively, are you Professor Lockhart's pet? If so, shake your head. Hearing the meaning behind Carter's question, Goo-goo thought about it, shook his head, and raised his head proudly, indicating that he understood what the other party meant. He is very smart. I can understand everything you say, but you can't understand what I say. Goo-goo. Goo-goo. Then, Goo-goo shook the collar on his neck, and rubbed the truck's arm with it. Seeing Goo-goo's cute behavior, Carter laughed out loud, and stretched out his finger, to touch the other's head gently. As if to praise, Goo-goo, you are so smart. Goo-goo. Goo-goo. Goo-goo obviously sensed Carter's inner praise, and was delighted. He took a step back, and stood in front of Carter. Puff. Puff. He flapped his wings hard and slowly flew up, but he was a little shaky. I don't know if it was because he was a little fat. Watching Goo-goo take off into the air and fly in front of them as if showing off, Steve and Carter hugged each other and watched the performance of the cute creature in front of them with a smile. Goo-goo flew in front of the two people and shook the collar on his neck in some distress, making a ding-ding sound. It seemed to tell the two that the collar made him very uncomfortable. After seeing it, Steve and Carter did not understand what Goo-goo meant, but thought the ding-ding sound was quite nice. After seeing that the two did not move, Goo-goo tilted his head in some distress. Goo-goo. Goo-goo. Landing in front of Carter, Goo-goo stretched out his wings and pointed at the collar on his neck to remind him. After seeing this, Carter seemed to understand a little and asked softly, Goo-goo, do you want us to help you untie the collar? Goo-goo. Goo-goo. Hearing Carter's words, Goo-goo nodded frantically, indicating that it was right. That's what he meant. But Carter was a little hesitant. It seemed that Professor Lockhart had given it to his pet. It would be inappropriate to take it off by himself, right? As if sensing Carter's hesitation, Gugu ran to Carter's hand and rubbed Carter's hand with the collar on his neck. Carter felt the cold touch of the collar and the itchiness of scratching his hand. He raised Gugu with great interest, put it in front of him, and then carefully observed the collar. The words on the collar had been seen before, but the whole collar was silver white, as if it was completely sealed, without a single crack. Although there seemed to be no marks on the surface, some lines inside could be felt by touch. Carefully groping along the lines, he soon touched a raised position. Carter guessed that this might be the button to turn it on or off. However, the way to open it is obviously very special. She tried to press it hard and found that it didn't work at all. Maybe she needed to use the wizard's method to open the collar. In fact, this is a magic collar made by Lockhart. It can be opened by pressing a button at the same time. The same operation can also be closed. It is very simple. This is mainly because Lockhart makes it convenient for the gold coin to open and close it. For Gugu, it is very difficult. Although it has magic power, it can't even touch its wings. How to open it? For the gold coin, it follows the instructions of its owner Lockhart. As long as Gugu can insist on exercising on time every day, the gold coin will open the collar after Gugu exercises and let Gugu move freely. When Gugu eats, put it on. If Gugu doesn't wear the collar, he won't eat. At the beginning, the effect was still very good. Gugu insisted on exercising every day in order to eat and move freely. But later, Gugu started to be rotten. I just want to wear it, and I don't want to move. Anyway, it's time. I can eat delicious food without exercising. Looking at the gold coins, there was nothing she could do. She couldn't not prepare food for her master's pet. Later, she talked to her master Lockhart, who was also a little helpless. Gugu was just like a child. According to the contract, he couldn't beat him, and scolding him didn't work. She couldn't think of any good way. After all, Gugu had already given up. She could only reduce his weight by restricting his food every day. This made Gugu, who was already a little bit of a slacker, completely unhappy, and there were fewer delicious foods. So she thought about how to get rid of the collar on her neck, go out and have a big meal. Carter felt relieved when she felt that she couldn't open it. To be honest, this was Professor Lockhart's pet after all. It was a bit unreasonable for her to open it. But if she didn't open it, she felt a little awkward looking at Gugu, who had just tried to be cute in front of her. It's good that she can't open it, so there is no psychological burden. So, he whispered to Gugu in front of him, "Gugu, I can't open this collar. Let's wait for your master Lockhart to come, and I'll talk to him." Hearing this, Gugu was a little distressed. In his perception, the other party seemed to be telling the truth, and not lying to him. This made him frown a little, drooping his head and retracting his wings. Then, he suddenly raised his head, his eyes lit up, as if he thought of something. He waved his wings, pointed at the collar on his neck, rubbed his head against Carter, and nodded. This made Carter a little confused, and he picked up the collar again, ready to tell Gugu that he really couldn't open it. "Gugu, look, it really can't be opened. Let's wait for Lockhart to come back, and I'll talk to him." As he said, Carter pressed the raise button on the collar again to show that he really had no way. But click, click, click. This time, Gugu was very smart. He poured his magic power into the collar in advance and waited for Carter to press the button. In an instant, the collar on his neck opened with a click. Gugu, Gugu. Feeling that the collar and the space suppression had completely disappeared, Gugu waved its wings excitedly. In an instant, a blue light flashed. Under the gaze of Carter and Steve, it teleported into the air. Then, the blue light flashed several times, and Gugu teleported excitedly in the air. Steve, who had been watching from the side, felt a little bad. Just now, he had been watching Carter and Gugu interacting, and he felt it was very interesting, and he didn't say anything. However, now, looking at Gugu, who seemed to be freed and very excited, both of them had some bad premonitions in their hearts. Gugu sensed the emotions in the hearts of the two people and teleported directly to them and landed in front of them. Gugu, Gugu, Gugu called several times in a row, waving his wings as if to comfort them, saying that nothing was wrong and the breeder would not say anything more. Humph, he was eating well, so he was just a little fatter. Not much. Why should he exercise? Running is very tiring. Seeing that Gugu did not leave, but ran up to him and greeted him cutely, Steve and Carter slowly put their minds at ease. I can explain it to Gugu and Lockhart later. It shouldn't be a big problem. Anyway, Gugu is right in front of him, and he didn't run away. Carter looked at Gugu and gently touched Gugu's little wings, secretly amazed. Just now, she observed that every time Gugu flapped his wings, a blue light would flash and then teleport. Crossing space is an ability that many people dream of. Unexpectedly, it was found in this cute creature. At this moment, Steve seemed to have thought of something and took out some snacks from his pocket. These were originally prepared by Steve to satisfy his appetite after training and replenish some energy. Gugu saw the snacks Steve took out, and his eyes lit up instantly. It looked delicious again. He quickly flapped his wings, and a blue light flashed. He teleported in front of Steve, looked at the snacks in Steve's hand, and called Steve cutely. Gugu, Gugu. Waving his wings and pointing at the snacks in front of him, it seemed to tell Steve, I want to eat too, I want to eat too. Seeing Gugu's cute actions, Steve understood instantly, and Carter next to him also looked at this scene with a smile on his face. Sure enough, the words on the collar were correct. Gugu's favorite thing was food. Steve would not refuse. He opened the small bag in his hand, poured out a few chocolate beans of different colors, and placed them in his palm. Gugu, Gugu. Gugu poked his head out, gently touched the red chocolate beans on his palm, sniffed, and seemed to feel the sweet taste inside. He ate one in one bite. Hey, it tastes surprisingly good. Gugu's eyes lit up, and he ate all the chocolate beans in Steve's palm in a few bites. Carter saw Gugu's cute eating, and quickly took the snacks from Steve's hand, and dropped a few in his hand, and put them in front of Gugu. After seeing it, Gugu excitedly ate again. Sure enough, the world is big, but eating is not the biggest. Steve and Carter looked at Gugu, who looked very cute even when eating food, and a faint smile floated on their faces. Cute animals always resonate with people. Then, Gugu set his eyes on other snacks, waved his wings, and teleported in front of the snacks. It seemed to remind the two, I want to try this. Seeing Gugu's cute behavior, the two naturally would not refuse. Then the two chatted, while slowly feeding Gugu snacks. It was so pleasant. After a while, suddenly Gugu tilted his head and called, waving his wings, as if reminding the two that someone was coming. As the two tilted their heads, a red flame portal quietly opened. Lockhart walked out of it. At the same time, Gugu hurriedly shouted at Lockhart a few times, then waved his wings and teleported away, while the portal was not closed. Well, as smart as he is, he knows that there are a lot of delicious food in the outside world. At this moment, Lockhart looked at Gugu's leaving figure, and sensed the information from the contract. He shook his head helplessly, but didn't care about anything. He didn't worry about Gugu's safety. With his intuition and teleportation, it was difficult for any creature to catch him. And through the contract, he could sense Gugu's location at any time, and just pick him up when he was tired of playing. In recent days, through the contract, he also felt that Gugu was a little depressed. Let him vent, and then slowly train him after he comes back. You can't push a child too hard, just take it slow. The thought flashed through his mind, and he saw Steve and Carter looking surprised and apologetic when they saw Gugu leave. He quickly comforted them. Steve, Carter, it's okay. Gugu just went out to play. It's normal. Well, after playing, he must start training, and can't let him continue to slack off. Then, Lockhart said to Steve, let's talk about some things about Ms. Carter. Chapter 215 I start a water reform the magic system. Steve subconsciously looked at Carter and then at Lockhart when he heard what Lockhart said. It was as if he was asking, is it convenient for Carter to know? Lockhart naturally understood what Steve meant and said with a smile, it's okay, it's not a big deal. I mainly want to talk about Ms. Carter's later arrangements and how you will teach the students next. After all, you will start the first class for Ian and others the day after tomorrow, and I must explain some details in advance. Hearing this, Carter and Steve nodded. Lockhart saw the surrounding environment, stretched out his wand, waved it lightly, and a portal quietly opened. Opposite was the number 101 study room of the Universal Book Cafe. Let's go, drink tea and chat. Lockhart entered the portal. Steve and Carter looked at each other and entered one by one. After the three of them entered the study and sat down, Lockhart poured a cup of tea for the two people opposite him, then smiled mischievously at Steve and said, "Steve, how have you been with Ms. Carter these 2 days? It's been 70 years since we last met. I'm sure you must have a lot of ideas to talk about." Steve didn't respond to Lockhart's words, but just looked at Carter. The two of them smiled at the same time. Seeing this, Lockhart felt like he was being fed a mouthful of dog food and felt bored. So, he didn't want to continue talking about this topic, and went straight to the point. "Steve, I talked to you before. I need you to help train my students in close combat ability." And Carter, "Steve should have talked to you before. I know through some channels that you are one of the founders of SHIELD, and I believe you should know a lot about the organizational structure of a force. I need your experience in this area. Not only teach my students, but if you can also give me some advice, that would be even better." Lockhart noticed that after hearing this, Steve nodded without hesitation. Carter, on the other hand, nodded slowly after a flash of thought in his eyes. Seeing the attitudes of the two, Lockhart's mouth curled up. Everything was as expected. Steve is a typical warrior. After agreeing, he naturally won't think too much, and he won't easily break his promise, unless it goes against his conscience. This is why Lockhart trusts Steve. After all, the spiritual quality of Captain America Steve has been verified, whether in the past history, or in the future plot. And Carter, who was an agent at the beginning, and later became the leader among the agents, naturally has a lot of ideas. But it doesn't matter who made these two people fall in love. One is a love spanning 70 years, and the other is a silent wait for 70 years. Lockhart believes that Carter's love for Steve must be greater than Steve's love for Carter. After all, 70 years is enough to destroy the love of most people, and at the same time, it can also temper the love of some people to be more tenacious. Obviously, Carter's love belongs to the latter. After seeing the two nod, Lockhart said in a deep voice, "Generally speaking, we will not disclose our information to ordinary people without reason. After all, our battlefield is different. So, the following information needs to be kept confidential, and is not allowed to be disclosed to anyone, including everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. At this point, Lockhart looked at Carter seriously. Seeing her nod, he nodded slightly and continued, "In order to ensure that the information is not leaked, we need to sign a magic contract. If you disclose it without my permission, the contract will automatically start, clear all your memories, and even affect your soul." Seeing the solemn eyes of the two, Lockhart explained lightly, "Magic contract is a method we often use, similar to your laws, but more coercive. As long as you don't violate it, there will be no impact at all. I believe that with your abilities, you two will definitely be able to keep your promise. You can do this, right?" Hearing what Lockhart said, Carter pondered for a moment, nodded slowly and said, "Okay, there is no problem with this." Steve next to him naturally didn't say much, and nodded as well. Seeing this, Lockhart extended his wand and lightly tapped in the air. Instantly, a red flame rune pattern quickly appeared with the previous point as the center. The two of them stared at this strange rune pattern closely. The next moment, a series of information quietly emerged in their minds. Confidentiality agreement between Gilderoy Lockhart, Steve Rogers, and Peggy Carter. The agreement is as follows. Steve and Carter will keep all extraordinary information about wizards, witches, etc. confidential for Gilderoy Lockhart. Without Gilderoy Lockhart's permission, it is forbidden to disclose it to outsiders. If it is leaked unconsciously, Lockhart must be notified immediately, and the information leakage problem must be cleaned up at the same time. If the contract is violated, Steve and Carter will erase all memories or shatter their souls according to the severity of the leaked information. Steve and Carter felt the content of the contract, and looked at each other, as if they were communicating. At the same time, Carter sighed in his heart, and looked up to Lockhart again. The other party's contract was very simple, but basically grasped the key points. The most important thing is that the two of them are completely bound together. If Carter violates the contract, Steve will also be in trouble. This forced Carter to put away all the little thoughts in his heart. At this moment, Steve didn't think much about it and felt that there was no big problem with these contracts. Looking at Carter's attitude, he found that there was no rejection. So he nodded slightly to Lockhart, and Carter naturally did the same. Seeing the attitudes of the two, Lockhart nodded slightly and continued, "Since you have no problem with the contract, let's officially sign it." As he said, he waved his wand, and in an instant, this strange rune pattern split into two, and entered the eyebrows of Stephen Carter. A red flame-colored magic mark appeared between the eyebrows of the two. Feeling that the contract was established, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. The most important thing in signing a contract is voluntary. Even if it is forced voluntary, it is also a kind of voluntary. If the other party directly refuses, the contract cannot be signed at all. Thinking about it, Lockhart began to introduce, "In order to facilitate you to further understand us, at the beginning, I will introduce Kamar-Taj to you." At this point, Lockhart's voice rose slightly, as if he was a little proud. Kamar-Taj is the holy land of all wizards on Earth, and has always taken it as its mission to resist dimensional invasions. It can be said that our Kamar-Taj is the true guardian of the Earth. Without Kamar-Taj, the Earth would have long since become a faith pasture for dimensional demons, or a ruined territory. At this point, Lockhart paused and joked to Carter, "This is different from what S.H.I.E.L.D. says. We are truly resisting dimensional invasions, and protecting the Earth. Not long ago, I just solved a Dormammu believer, and prevented a dimensional invasion. Here, I want to emphasize one point, and that is to give up past cognition. The mages of Kamar-Taj are different from the mages you know. They have extremely strong magical abilities, but they also have extremely strong melee abilities." At this point, Lockhart said to Steve, "Otherwise, I wouldn't ask the captain to train my students. These students of mine have been studying magic with me for less than 2 months. They all have good talents, but their practical abilities are a bit poor, so they need to be trained hard. In the future, I will have to trouble the captain to provide close combat guidance. At the same time, we must take good care of practical training. If we encounter danger, we must take action in time." Hearing this, Steve immediately grasped the key point and asked directly, "Lockhart, what do you mean by practical training? Is it a real fight? Who is the opponent? Is it a wizard like you?" Hearing Steve's question, Lockhart shook his head and said, "Captain, my students' level is still insufficient. They have not experienced a few decent battles before. If they fight wizards directly, the possibility of winning is too low. So, I found a practical target for them. A criminal drug trafficking organization in hand." Speaking of this, Lockhart paused, waved his wand directly, and a light golden ball of light appeared in front of the two. Then, under Lockhart's control, it floated towards Steve. At the same time, Lockhart introduced, "This is the relevant information of the hand. Captain, you can learn about it first, and then when you meet Ian and the others, you can learn about the specific combat power of the hand. I remind you, don't underestimate the other party. As far as I know, the other party also has extraordinary abilities, and may be connected with some dimensional demons, so you must pay more attention. It may not matter for the minions, but you must pay more attention to the 5 fingers of the hand." Hearing Lockhart's reminder, Steve nodded seriously to show that he understood. Recalling the information that just came to his mind, especially the other party's vicious means of artificially creating deaf and dumb people, Steve was full of murderous intent towards the hand. If there was a chance, he would never let go of this evil organization. This is more hateful than those asterisk enemies during World War II. Not only bullying the weak, but also drug trafficking. In his era, he witnessed with his own eyes the harm caused by drugs. The lighter one was his own death, and the heavier one was the destruction of his family. Sensing Steve's attitude, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. Then, he looked at Carter, saw her delicate face, brown wavy short hair and capable temperament, and said in a deep voice, "Ms. Carter, your problem is much more complicated than the captain's. After all, the captain has been frozen for 70 years, so he still has a long life in the future. But you are different. Your life is normally lost. Even if you are originally sick, I'm afraid that the price you pay for living for another year will be very high. although I have cleared all the diseases in your body and restored your youth. But the price you pay is not small. Judging from the current situation, maintaining a youthful state. At this point, Lockhart paused and said slowly, "You still have 1 year to live." Hearing this, Steve's face showed a little anxiety, but Carter was still very calm. It seemed that he didn't care about the bad news, that he only had 1 year left to live. Seeing Carter's calm expression, Lockhart secretly praised him in his heart. He is worthy of being a legendary agent who founded SHIELD, and his character cultivation is really good. Looking at Steve, who looked a little anxious, Lockhart smiled and said, "Don't worry, Captain. I told you before that it's not a big problem. I can solve it. Besides, Miss Carter is my student's teacher, so she won't let her die easily." Hearing this, Carter raised his eyebrows slightly, as if he had heard the hidden meaning. If she was no longer the teacher of Lockhart's student, would he have to give up on her? Then, Lockhart continued, "Ms. Carter's problem is that she lacks vitality, and I know several ways to get vitality, so it's not a big problem." Hearing this, Steve felt a little more at ease, but he still looked at Carter with a hint of worry. Well, this is the most basic quality of being a good boyfriend and a good husband. "Professor Lockhart, what do you need me to do specifically?" Carter asked directly. She could clearly feel that Lockhart valued her much more than Steve. Instilling vitality, just by listening to this word, you know that the value is definitely not low, and Lockhart is still willing to pay. This shows that Lockhart's arrangement for her is definitely not as simple as teaching students. Feeling Carter's calm attitude, Lockhart nodded with satisfaction. What is the most lacking thing in the 21st century? Talent. Why does he attach so much importance to Ian and the other two? It's because these 3 people are the talents he carefully selected, and he regards them as the middle pillars of the new magic system in the future. As the helmsman of the new magic system, he cannot lack good crew members like Ian, and talents like Carter. Her role is to make the big ship of the new magic system more solid, stable, and more combat effective. With his thoughts turning, Lockhart's heart pays more attention to Carter, but his face still keeps a faint smile. "Ms. Carter, for your arrangement, I think of 2 routes, both of which are very suitable for you. I hope you can tell me your choice after listening carefully." Carter nodded curiously to Lockhart's words, and her heart was full of expectations. She felt that she might have to get in touch with the core of proving the wizard professor. Seeing Carter's expression, Lockhart smiled slightly and gently tapped the desk with his fingers. In an instant, a transparent ripple separated Steve, confusing his vision and hearing. Some information is not convenient for Steve to know now. Similarly, when Carter really refused, he also needed to cleanse his memory. However, he believed that such a problem should not arise. "Ms. Carter, I said before that I'm the Wizard of Kamar-Taj, but at the same time, I believe you have obtained my other identity from S.H.I.E.L.D., the Professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts. You can understand it as that I have a world in my hands, and in this world, I have started a war. A war about the innovation of the magic system. I need someone to help me build a complete wizard power system." Listening to Lockhart's constant narration, Carter's face began to change constantly. Even if she let go of her imagination, she would never imagine that Professor Lockhart had such a plan. Even in one of her narrations, she thought of the biggest enemy she encountered during World War II, Hitler. But at the same time, the golden dragon magic mark on Carter's forehead began to emerge vaguely, and began to slowly affect her emotions and cognition. "Ms. Carter, this is my first plan. If you choose this one, I will help you become a wizard and master magic. At the same time, I will pay a huge price to help you completely eliminate all hidden dangers in your body. You can live with the captain in love, and if the captain needs it, I can also provide corresponding help. After all, if you choose the first one, then you are my companion, and you are welcome to explore the road of magic with me. And the second plan, as I said at the beginning, you are only responsible for training students' organizational skills. At the same time, I will maintain your vitality until you stop training. After the end, I will also give you the equivalent of 5 years of vitality as a gift for you to meet the captain. Ms. Carter, you can tell me your choice now." Thanks to Giant Bookworm number 1 and Bookfriend 20200129144640702 for the monthly ticket. Chapter 216, Adventures of Magical Creatures. In the morning, on a rooftop somewhere in Queens, New York. Goo goo. Goo goo. A flash of blue light, and goo goo, a dark blue bulldog bird shaped like a dodo, appeared on the rooftop of a tall building. Looking at the tall buildings rising one after another in the distance, Goo goo called out in a daze. Goo goo. Goo goo. It seemed like the first time I came here, and it was a little different from what I remembered. I lowered my head and looked down at the ordinary people coming and going on the street and the shops emitting fragrance on the street. Goo goo hesitated. His intuition told him that it was not good to go down, and the breeder had just told him through the contract that he could not go to crowded places. If he caused chaos, he would have to stay at home in the future. But what does it mean to cause chaos? Goo goo tilted his head and thought about it. As long as no one sees it, it shouldn't be called causing chaos, right? Looking at the fragrant bread in a shop below, Goo goo thought to himself. Puff. He flapped his wings, and in an instant, a blue light flashed. At the same time, in the bakery below, the baker put the freshly baked bread on a plate, and next to it was a series of breads that were made not long ago. Not far away, some young people were sitting at the dining table, playing with their mobile phones, while eating their breakfast. Suddenly, a blue light flashed, and Goo goo looked at the freshly baked, fragrant bread with some regret. Looking at the high square bread slices stacked next to him, he lifted the top layer and flapped his wings again. As smart as he is, he will not commit crimes against the wind. Take a small inconspicuous piece first. If it is really delicious, you can take more, and you can also ask the breeder to come and buy it later. With another flash of blue light, Goo goo returned to the rooftop and looked at a pale yellow square bread slice in front of him. Goo goo. Goo goo. He opened his mouth and took a bite. Hey, it doesn't seem to be as delicious as imagined. Not sweet, a little light. This made Goo goo, who likes sweets, a little disappointed. The chef and owner of the bakery below turned around again and put the freshly baked bread on the plate. Looking at the plate next to him, that seemed to be shorter than the toast, and then looking at the guests who were eating breakfast, there was some doubt in his eyes. Did he remember it wrong? It shouldn't be like this. There were 8 slices in total. How come there were only 7 slices left? And it hasn't been processed yet, and it hasn't been spread with jam. You can't eat even one slice. After thinking about it, I still feel that there is no need to make a loud noise. It doesn't matter if it's a worthless piece of bread. Just treat it as a reward for the dog. The boss secretly cursed. At this moment, Goo goo took a bite of the bland toast, spit it out, and shook his head with some disappointment. Then he set his sights on the nearby cake shop. It felt that the bread in this shop was not delicious, so the cake shop next to it with a milky aroma should taste good. Carefully observe the number of people in the shop. It seems that there are not many people. There is only a woman who looks like Vera walking around. Goo goo tilted his head and thought about it, kicked the bread next to him aside, and flapped his wings. A blue light flashed and entered the cake shop. Goo goo carefully avoided the woman not far away, and his 2 sapphire-like eyes stared at the small cakes on the counter. Goo goo. Goo goo. Feeling the fragrance of the cake, Goo goo felt that his saliva was about to flow out. The next moment, he flapped his wings, accompanied by a blue light, and entered the counter, looking at the small cake in front of him, with a red strawberry and blue blueberries on it. He carefully looked around, and found that no one seemed to notice him. He stretched out his little tongue, and licked it gently. Goo goo. Goo goo. Delicious. Delicious. Goo goo's eyes lit up, holding the small cake in front of him, flapped his wings, and after a blue light, he returned to the rooftop. Badgie. Badgie. Back on the rooftop, Goo goo opened his mouth directly and ate the small cake in front of him bite by bite. After 5 or 6 bites, the cake was finished. Feeling the sweet milky fragrance left in his mouth, as well as the sour and sweet taste of strawberries and blueberries, Goo goo was a little excited and flapped his wings, teleporting around nearby. It's delicious. It's really delicious. After several blue lights, Goo goo stopped and looked into the cake shop again. It found that it seemed that the people inside didn't notice its stealing. In line with the principle of finding a delicious restaurant, you have to eat well. Goo goo flapped his wings again, returned to the counter, tilted his head, and looked at which cake to eat this time. This time, he saw a brown chocolate cake with pink cream and strawberries wrapped on it. Smelling the strong milky aroma inside, Gugu drooled a little. He carefully forgot to look around again. He flapped his wings, entered the counter, and stretched out his tongue again, ready to taste the cake. Suddenly, a woman screamed, and Gugu was frightened to flap his wings and leave quickly. Seeing the strange blue creature disappear in front of him, the woman in the cake shop stroked her chest to reduce her shock. But at the same time, looking at the empty counter, the woman was a little suspicious, whether she was dazzled and scared herself. The next lesson, the woman ran forward and saw that there was a cream strawberry cake missing in the cabinet, and there was also a licked chocolate cake. Her face suddenly changed, and she ran out of the store and looked around at the door. After finding that there was nothing unusual, she quickly closed the store door and checked the surveillance to see what was going on. At this moment, Gugu returned to the rooftop and looked at the cake shop below with some regret. It felt like it had gotten into trouble again. It tilted its head and thought about it, and decided to let the breeder worry about this matter. It should run away first. Go farther to see if there is anything delicious, Gugu thought while flapping its wings and rushing towards the distance. As the blue light flashed, Gugu flew away, and the people below, some looked up and found that the blue light was flashing, which was quite magical. The curious took their mobile phones to take pictures directly, and even those with cameras took a few pictures. Then, some dark blue dodo pictures began to circulate on the internet. However, the impact was not great. Many people thought it was fun, and it was normal for someone to Photoshop the pictures, until a short video was uploaded on the internet and began to go viral. The dark blue dodo stole the cake, and the shop owner learned about it through surveillance. The reason for the popularity was not because of stealing the cake. It was Gugu's cute and careful observation of the surrounding actions, and the excited and cute expression after gently tasting the cake. It instantly captured the love of a large number of netizens. At the same time, a group of people began to question the authenticity of the video, because the cake shop logo in the video was too conspicuous. It was hard not to wonder if it was a marketing video made by the business for publicity. But at the same time, there were also a group of people who emphasized that the surveillance video was not fake. The quarrel between the two sides raised the heat, and soon, it alarmed SHIELD, which has been monitoring the internet for a long time. On the rooftop of a high-rise building in Queens, New York, I can guarantee with my dog head that it is definitely photoshopped. Anyone can see it. Every time it disappears, it is covered with blue light. It is so fake. Who would believe it? I don't think it is fake. Do you think it is what you think? It is obviously fake. I wish the person above will be blind forever. According to my analysis, it is very likely that this is the next protagonist of Disney. This time it is a test. If the effect is good, maybe the next movie will be released. It is confirmed. It is confirmed. This company has already produced the patent image of the dark blue dodo 3 months ago. Image. Peter sat on the rooftop, holding a Mexican burrito in his right hand and a mobile phone in his left hand. While swiping his mobile phone, he liked it from time to time in front of the crowd, but did not comment. He basically experienced the entire dark blue dodo incident on the internet. He first saw the video, and then saw other people saying it was true and false at the same time. Then, I don't know if it was a water army, but they started to promote the delicious cakes of the cake shop, and then they started to promote the cuteness of the dodo. Some people said it was an alien creature, and some said it was an ancient extinct creature on Earth. It got even more confusing later. What about the next animated movie protagonist, an internet celebrity animal? And even Peter had seen someone using the banner of the dodo to collect money. The excuse was to protect rare creatures, and there were crowdfunding to open a store, etc. And there were actually fools who paid money. It can be said that Peter was very surprised. However, from the internet, almost all public opinion was against it, saying that this dark blue dodo was fake, and someone took it out to make a fuss. Peter was a little skeptical about this. Family members know their own business. The changes in his body were entirely due to a spider bite, and not long ago he saw a wizard-like existence. It is not impossible for a magical animal to pop up at this time. However, this has nothing to do with him. Just do your own thing. I'm not in a hurry today, I can go home later. Since Aunt Mary got an investment, she has been focusing on the newly opened book cafe, and for him, she is less concerned. Surprisingly, he has more pocket money on weekdays. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, investors. This made him feel very happy. Not only did he have more time to go out, he didn't have to worry about Mary finding out, and he could buy more food. He always felt a little hungry. It was because of his special body that his energy consumption was greater than usual. After eating the burrito in his hand, Peter still felt a little hungry, so he prepared to buy some desserts as usual. He found that sweet foods have higher calories and are easier to replenish the energy needed by the body. Besides, he loves sweets very much, and his favorite is chocolate. Standing on the edge of the rooftop, looking at the distance, that makes people subconsciously feel scared, especially seeing the small empty alley. It is even more daunting. But Peter is used to it, and he jumped lightly. While feeling the excitement of falling from a high altitude, his right hand shook. In an instant, a white silk thread shot from the spider silk launcher in his hand to the wall of a high-rise building in the distance. With the help of the power of the spider silk, he quickly jumped into the distance. At the same time, his right hand also shot a white silk thread towards the high-rise building in the distance. With the same force, he jumped further into the distance. Soon, the familiar figure of Spider-Man appeared again in Queens, New York. Hey, Grandma, make sure you look at the traffic light before you go. Spider-Man picked up the old lady walking in the middle of the road and jumped to the opposite street, pointing at the red light in front of him and the car that just sped away. Well, it's fine. Hearing the advice of the Spider-Man in red and blue clothes in front of her, the grandma was stunned and nodded. Then I'll go first, Grandma. Remember to look at the green light before you go next time. After seeing this, Spider-Man shook his hand and turned away. The whole process took only more than 10 seconds. Peter was used to it. When he was old, sometimes he just didn't pay attention. If he was lucky, the other party would break, and it might be okay, but if he was unlucky, some people really couldn't break. Then, Peter shot out spider silk into the distance, jumped from midair to the distance, and rushed to his destination. Once again, he helped an old man avoid the risk of being hit by a car, and saved a man who was robbed in the alley. By the way, he also called the police station to tell them about the 2 black robbers tied by spider silk. Well, although the policeman's attitude was a bit bad, Peter didn't care. Soon, Peter arrived at his destination, Days' Dessert Shop. Hey, Days, the old rules: 5 dessert rings, 5 chocolate cakes, 5 egg tarts, and 3 cups of my favorite milk tea, Peter said to the black boss in the store. Okay, Spider-Man, yours has been prepared for you. The black boss Days carried 2 bags and put them in front of Peter. Daisy, your desserts are still large in size, delicious and cheap. Peter praised while taking out some dollars from his pocket, put them on the table, chatted for a few words, and left with the bags. He still had to find a place to have a good meal. But what he didn't notice was that above the store, there was a blue figure with shining eyes, looking at the desserts in his bag. And the boss Days looked at Peter's figure going away, his face full of smiles. Not only was he a big customer, but Spider-Man also improved the reputation of his store a lot. Many people came to his shop to buy desserts. Of course, he would not charge Peter a high price. He even wanted to give it to him for free. Unfortunately, the other party still wanted to pay. Turning around, Daisy looked at the desserts that had just been baked in his shop and was a little confused. Did he feel wrong? He always felt that there was less. But he must have felt wrong. With Spider-Man's frequent visit, he had fewer troubles. Well, small troubles are useful, but big troubles still depend on himself. At this moment, Peter flew to the rooftop of a nearby high-rise building, looking into the distance, while opening the 2 bags in his hands. One was placed next to him, and the other was placed in front of him. He took out a chocolate cake and ate it while playing with his mobile phone. After eating a chocolate cake, he reached into his pocket and took out a donut. He continued to eat and play and felt thirsty, so he took a sip of iced milk tea. This feeling is really refreshing. Suddenly, Peter was alert. Looking out of the corner of his eye, a blue dodo quietly appeared, holding the milk tea he placed next to him. Puff. A blue light flashed, and the figure disappeared. This surprised Peter. The rumored dark blue dodo actually appeared. He really thought it was fake. And it even stole his favorite milk tea. This immediately made Peter happy. After thinking about it, he took out some desserts from his bag, put them with paper underneath, and placed them a little away from him. He continued to eat the donut in his hand, while looking at his phone. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217. Frightened Gugu. 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 Delicious. Really delicious. Gugu, who had drunk the milk tea, was instantly conquered by the rich aroma of the milk tea and the pearl beans of various colors in it. Gudang. Gudang. Looking at the empty cup in front of him, Gugu smacked his lips, and a look of aftertaste appeared on his little face. Then, he looked at Spider-Man, who was sitting on the rooftop not far away, wearing red and blue clothes, and playing with his mobile phone. He tilted his head and thought for a while, then flapped his wings and teleported to a place not far away. Looking at the cakes, donuts, and a cup of milk tea placed on the ground, Gugu's face was full of hesitation. They were all delicious, but the problem was that there was still someone guarding it. It was very smart, and had already seen such an obvious problem. When I was in school before, those little wizards were like this, and wanted to catch it, but it was very smart. It ate the food, but just didn't let them touch it. If they touched it, there would be no such opportunity in the future. As long as they couldn't catch it, there would be a steady stream of food in front of it. It was very smart. Well, I know the difference between exhausting the pond and sustainable development. The only pity is that the breeder did not give it a chance to use its intelligence. After thinking about it, it might be the temptation of delicious food, or it might be that its intuition told it that there should be no danger. Gugu flapped its wings, a blue light flashed, and it teleported to the chocolate cake. Gently licked a bite of the chocolate cake. Well, the soft texture, rich cocoa flavor, sweet and delicious. It is really delicious. Take another bite. The tender cream and the soft cake blend together. It's really delicious. Gugu excitedly waved his wings and licked a few more gently. Then he glanced at Spider-Man not far away, picked him up and teleported away. Back to his temporary base. Badgy. Finding that the cake tasted good, plus returning to a safe base, Gugu's appetite opened up, and he ate the remaining chocolate cake in a few bites. At this moment, Peter sensed that the creature similar to the dodo appeared again, especially secretly observing the other party's complete teleportation process. Peter was secretly amazed, but at the same time, he was instantly conquered by Gugu's cute action of tasting the cake. After thinking for a while, he took out another chocolate cake and put it in the original place. Then he continued to browse his phone, looking at the position of the chocolate cake from time to time, expecting Gugu to appear again. After a while, Gugu, who had finished eating the cake, saw the chocolate cake again. He looked at Spider-Man next to him, and with his intuition, he felt that the other party had emotions of surprise, expectation, and joy in his heart, but there was no malice to capture him, nor did he feel any danger. Instantly, it was clear that this human, like the little wizard before, was a granary. However, the breeder told it not to rely on its intuition alone. Although it has never listened to what the breeder said seriously, Gugu tilted its head and looked at Spider-Man Peter leaning on the rooftop. Fluttering its wings, a blue light flashed. This time, it teleported to the side of the milk tea, waved its wings again, and left with the milk tea. Then, accompanied by a blue light, Gugu appeared next to the chocolate cake again, and then took it. Finally, it was the donut again, and took it away. On the rooftop, only Spider-Man Peter and the bag of desserts next to him were left. This surprised Peter. This creature that looked like a dodo bird took everything away directly. It was too cunning. This disappointed him. He was also going to take the opportunity to snap a few pictures of the other party eating food. Whether it was for the newspaper or his friends, they would definitely look great. After thinking about it, Peter took out a chocolate cake and donuts from the bag next to him. As for the milk tea, excluding the cup in his hand, the last one was the last one. He bought 3 cups, and 2 of them were taken away by the dodo bird. Thinking back to this, Peter was a little amused. After thinking about it, he decided to bleed a little and try to get a chance to snap a picture. With a decision in mind, Peter stood up, holding the bag in his hand, thought about it, and put it on the ground. Then he walked to the edge of the rooftop and jumped down. Gugu, who was observing Spider-Man Peter from a distance, widened his eyes, his face full of surprise, and then a little panic. It knew the difference between ordinary muggles and wizards. The breeder told him, if he jumps down like this, he will die. It's over, it's over. If the keeper knew, it would be really finished. How could this muggle be so fragile? He just ate some of his delicious food. Why would he jump off the building? After thinking for a while, Gugu flapped his wings, and a blue light flashed, and he teleported to the edge of the roof. Seeing that there was no blood or corpse below, the aunt tilted her head, and a question mark seemed to appear on the top of her head. Is this muggle dead or not? After thinking for a while, she found that there was no result. So she turned around, and looked at the cake and dessert bag on the ground, and decided to eat it first. Only when a bird is full can it have the energy to think about whether this muggle is dead or not. Gugu. Gugu. With a blue light flashing, Gugu teleported to the dessert bag with some excitement. He stretched out his wings, tilted the bag to the ground, and dumped all the boxes of desserts inside on the ground. Looking at the large amount of chocolate cakes and dessert rings on the ground, Gugu waved his wings with some excitement, and kept teleporting in the air. The blue light flashing in the air seemed to express Gugu's excitement. Before, he had to hide when eating delicacies. He only dared to take a small one each time, and he didn't dare to take too much. He didn't dare to stay in one place for a long time, for fear of being discovered by others. Now he has the opportunity to eat so many delicacies in one go. Gugu said that he was very happy. Gugu. Gugu. Gugu stood in front of the plastic box, waved his wings, and infused magic according to the method taught by the breeder. In an instant, the plastic box opened, and Gugu smelled the milky fragrance of the cake. He licked it gently, and it was delicious. At this moment, Peter returned to Day's dessert shop again, saw the boss working inside, shook his hand, and said happily, "Boss, give me another 3 cups of milk tea." "No, 4 cups. The black boss Days heard a familiar voice, and turned around quickly. He was a little surprised that Spider-Man came again. He used to buy everything on the same day and basically never came back. Why did he come back to buy again today? Spider-Man, no problem, wait a moment. Although there were some doubts in his mind, Dace agreed immediately. He lowered his head and started making milk tea. Peter went into the dessert shop again and observed the cakes inside. He was going to buy some other small cakes because he found that the dark blue dodo seemed to like cream very much. I hope that this time I can capture the cute expression of the other party. "Boss, give me 3 pieces of this and 2 pieces of this." Spider-Man Peter pointed to the 5 kinds of small cakes in the dessert shop and said to the boss. Soon, Peter looked at the 4 cups of milk tea and 2 dessert bags in front of him and smiled with satisfaction. After paying the money, he jumped up with the milk tea and cake, ready to go back to where he was before. I hope that the cakes and desserts are left behind will work and keep the dodo from leaving. P.S. I found that the 2-in-1 subscription is even worse, so I'd better restore one chapter to more than 2,000 words and update 6 times today. Chapter 218 Spider-Man Peter and the Bull Escape Bird Gugu. New York, Queens, a rooftop somewhere. Gugu. Gugu. Looking at the dessert ring in front of him, Gugu tilted his head and hesitated, and finally kicked it away with his feet. He likes to eat chocolate cake. He tried the dessert ring, but found that it was not as delicious as chocolate cake. He swayed and walked towards the dessert bag again, stuck his head in to see if there was any chocolate cake left. Unfortunately, it seemed that he had eaten it all. It was all because this cake was too delicious. He couldn't help it, and ate it all. Gugu felt a little regretful about this. He originally planned to bring one to the breeder. He asked him to let him run out to play next time. Unfortunately, he couldn't help it, and ate it all. It's not his fault, it's really because this cake tastes so good. Suddenly, Gugu looked at the dessert ring opposite and his eyes lit up. Although the dessert ring tasted ordinary, he could take this back to the breeder. Maybe, if the breeder is happy, he will let it out every day in the future. Then, he can eat delicious food again. Gugu waved his wings excitedly for the good idea that popped into his mind. With several blue lights, Gugu teleported several times in the sky, as if praising his own cleverness. Then, Gugu returned to the bag, looked at the white dessert bag in front of him, waved his wings, and pulled the dessert bag towards the donuts on the ground through magic. After the breeder's teaching, although it is impossible for it to release any magic, it can still move some objects through magic. Well, in fact, Lockhart also wants to ask Gugu to learn space magic. After all, Gugu's space talent is really nothing to say, teleportation is completely instinctive, and the consumption is extremely low, including when casting mirror space, portal, space blade and other space magic with it, the consumption is always reduced to varying degrees. You must know that space magic is notoriously difficult and consumes a lot, but at the same time it is also top-notch in power. If Gugu masters the corresponding space magic, it is equivalent to having one more combat force under his command. As a result, this lazy guy thinks about eating all day long, and he didn't learn any magic when he was asked to learn. This made Lockhart a little helpless. When will Gugu be able to compete with the little snake? The talent is not much worse than that of the little snake, but he just doesn't work hard. You see the little snake? Well, he is also a lazy guy. He usually lies in the Vincian book cafe, motionless, like a otaku. Lockhart is speechless about this magical creature that relies purely on talent to make a living. It's just that there are more things to do now. When there is enough time later, Lockhart plans to train them specifically. No matter what, the unique talents of the two beasts cannot be wasted. The white dessert bag followed Gugu, walked to a dessert ring, waved its wings, and put the dessert ring into the bag. 1, 2 then Gugu dragged the bag, and put the remaining dessert rings in the bag. At the same time, click, click, click. When Gugu was putting the dessert rings, the sound of the camera clicking came from behind. It was the picture that Peter saw Gugu swaying and putting the dessert rings into the bag. After sensing the movement around him, Gugu turned around and looked at Spider-Man Peter behind him. Although he was a little surprised that the other party didn't die just now, Gugu didn't think too much, because the 3 large fragrant dessert bags in Peter's hand attracted its attention. Gugu, feeling that the human in front of him had the idea of giving him delicious food, Gugu became a little excited. After thinking about it, he decided to take the initiative in this matter. He placed the bag full of dessert rings in front of him, waved his wings, pointed at the bag, and then pointed at the bag in Peter's hand. Then he told Peter, "Let's make a deal. 1 bag for 1 bag. Well, as for the keeper's share, wait until it finishes eating." With his sensitive intuition, Peter easily understood what Gugu meant. He was instantly amused. He took his previous dessert rings to exchange for the current milk tea and cake. This little animal is so smart. Gugu. Seeing that the other party was laughing all the time, Gugu was a little dissatisfied and shouted and pointed at the bag again, as if telling the other party whether to make a deal. After Peter understood, he made a gentle stroking gesture and then put all 3 bags on the ground. "Let me touch it, and I will give it all to you." Gugu looked at the other party's expectant eyes and hesitated. Of course, he understood what the other party meant, because the group of little wizards did the same thing before. Although Gugu felt that the other party had no ill intentions, he was still a little worried. At this moment, Peter saw Gugu without any action, and felt that his meaning was not conveyed properly. After thinking about it, he opened the bag in his hand, and placed the cakes on the ground one by one, and the milk tea in the middle, and opened the plastic boxes on the cakes. Then he stepped back and sat on the edge of the roof. It was as if he was telling Gugu that he could eat whatever he wanted. Seeing this scene, after feeling that there was really no danger inside, Gugu couldn't help it. He ran directly to the cake, looked at this mango cake that he saw for the first time, and licked it with his tongue. Well, it's delicious. Click, click. At the same time, the sound of a camera came, and Gugu tilted his head and didn't care after seeing it. Just take pictures. He remembered that there was a little wizard who liked taking pictures before. It doesn't matter. The sky is big, the earth is big, but it's not as good as eating the biggest. After licking a bite of the mango cake, Gugu ran to another cake and looked at the pink cream and familiar strawberries on it. He licked it again and found that it tasted even better. This made Gugu a little excited. Before, he always had to hide everywhere to eat food, but now there are so many delicacies that he can eat at will, which makes him very happy. It was as if he was back in Hagrid's hut, and Hagrid put all the delicacies in front of him. His favorability towards Spider-Man Peter suddenly increased. Seeing this scene, Spider-Man Peter sat down with his legs crossed, not thinking about getting close, for fear that his actions would make the other party run away. He just held the camera and kept shooting alone. Click, click, click. This is good material. He suddenly had an idea, that is, whether to let this cute animal promote his own book cafe. Maybe the effect will be very good. He remembered that Mehdi was said to make an Iron Man themed book cafe before, but later for some reason, he didn't mention it. With the popularity of this dodo bird on the internet now, if a book cafe with it as the theme can be made, it may be a big hit. Thinking of this, Peter was a little excited. At this moment, Gugu felt the excitement in Peter's heart and looked at him with some doubt. After finding that there seemed to be no danger, it continued to drink milk tea. Well, the milk tea tasted good. Peter saw Gugu gently open his mouth, and the milk tea in the cup automatically entered Gugu's mouth like a stream of water. This made Peter feel very surprised. This dark blue dodo might really know magic, and it was really smart. Chapter 219 Hydra in action. I'll take you to continue eating delicious food. Let me touch it. After seeing Gugu finish the cake and milk tea on the ground, Peter quickly took out new cake and milk tea. He put them on the ground, pointed at the milk tea and cake, and spoke slowly while making corresponding movements. He was afraid that Gugu would not understand. Gugu, Gugu, Gugu tilted his head, as if thinking. Of course, it understood what the other party meant, but was just hesitating whether to let the other party touch it. After thinking about it, he decided to trust his intuition. His intuition told him that the other party was a person with a relatively pure heart and no malice. He was similar to those little witches. Maybe in the future, his delicious food will have to rely on the human in front of him. Thinking of this, Gugu nodded slowly. When Peter saw this, he showed an excited smile on his face, took out a piece of chocolate cake, opened it, and walked over carefully. Then he put it next to Gugu's mouth, and watched Gugu eat it bite by bite. He himself gently stroked it. At the same time, he took out his mobile phone, and took a selfie with Gugu. Although Gugu was curious, what was the human in front of him doing? But faced with the delicious food in front of it, it obviously didn't want to think too much, and just ate it first. Gugu, Gugu. In no time, Gugu finished the cake in his hand, called out, and waved his wings to point at the milk tea. Peter naturally understood, and hurried over to get the milk tea, and put it next to Gugu's mouth. In this way, Spider-Man Peter and the ball-eating bird Gugu established a preliminary friendly relationship by feeding food. SHIELD. Coulson's office. Coulson, wearing a suit, stood in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the whole of New York. Behind him, a young SHIELD agent was reporting. Sir, we have sent people to guide the public opinion online. Now the mainstream perception online is that this is a marketing campaign. Also, we have sent people to the cake shop before to get all the surveillance records. At the same time, we investigated all the surveillance in the surrounding area and found that this strange creature does have the ability to teleport, and the location at that time is very likely the original location. After that, we sorted out various pictures on the internet, summarized the tracks, and are looking for the last trace of this dodo. But given that the other party has the ability to teleport, the search is very difficult. Our team members suggested that we can use food to induce the other party to appear and then capture it. Coulson listened and thought over and over in his mind. When he received the news about the dark blue dodo, he immediately sent people to guide the public opinion online. At the same time, he sent people to see if he could catch it back. This is the first time he has seen a creature with spatial abilities. However, when he knew the location where this creature appeared, he hesitated. Because the location where this dodo appeared was not far from the Universal Book Cafe. Then, there is a possibility that this dodo belongs to the Universal Book Cafe, or more precisely, it is very likely to belong to the wizard professor. This made him feel a little troubled. If it was the wizard professor, then we couldn't just do it. After all, the relationship between the two sides was not hostile, and even if there was a deal between the two sides, S.H.I.E.L.D. would be even less likely to take the initiative to destroy this relationship. After all, they had already taken a lot of good things from the wizard professor. Well, he had taken a lot too. Coulson touched his head, and his short hair began to grow slowly, thinking to himself. Then, after the agent finished his report, Coulson slowly said, "Jason, if you find any trace of this dark blue dodo, report it to me in time, and start monitoring at the same time. Don't act on your own." "Okay, sir." The S.H.I.E.L.D. agent named Jason nodded. However, what Coulson didn't notice was that a trace of indifference flashed across the other person's face, and then returned to normal. Then, Jason turned and left Coulson's office. He walked out of the office, took out his mobile phone, and dialed a number. Soon, after the call was connected, Jason said indifferently, "Sir, the plan failed, and Coulson did not order the capture operation." At the same time, in the Hydra underground base in New York, bald Agent Sitwell, wearing a pale mask and wig, stood on the platform, with a huge black screen behind him. On the screen was a map of the entire Queensborough of New York City. At the same time, 5 red dots appeared on the map and kept flashing. If Spider-Man Peter saw it, he would find that the red dot in the middle was exactly where he was. At this time, Sitwell looked serious and ordered coldly at the Hydra agents wearing tight combat suits below. "Mission target, a dodo that can teleport. No means are limited. Try to bring it back alive. If you can't capture it, a corpse is also fine. The target's inferred ability information and possible location have been sent to you. Now, start the action." With Sitwell's order, dozens of Hydra agents were divided into 5 groups and rushed out quickly. Looking at the Hydra agents leaving, Sitwell slowly took off his mask and wig. The target of this operation may be related to the wizard professor. If Coulson can think of it, they can naturally think of it too. However, Coulson did not fall into the trap and was unwilling to take action, so don't blame Hydra for taking action. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. began to obtain some information about the wizard professor, it was basically very messy and there was almost no valuable information. This made his superior Alexander Pierce somewhat dissatisfied. But there was no way. They had sent people to try to enter the Universal Book Cafe, but at the same time, like the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, it was useless. They couldn't blatantly carry bombs and rocket launchers to cover fire. Therefore, they could only obtain information through S.H.I.E.L.D's channels. But they never expected that this dark blue dodo bird suspected to have come out of the Universal Book Cafe would appear. When the possible identity was discovered, Sitwell immediately concluded that this was a good opportunity to test the wizard professor. If this teleporting dodo bird has nothing to do with the wizard professor, then Hydra will obtain this extremely valuable strange creature. If it is related to the wizard professor, then it just happens that this is an opportunity to test the other party's strength. If it is within the scope of response, don't blame Hydra for being rude. Because in this world, weakness is the original sin. In a room near Day's dessert shop in Queens, 10 Hydra agents wearing tight combat suits held computers in their hands, and a large number of surveillance video images kept appearing on the computers. It was the Hydra agents who tried to find the traces of the dodo through the surveillance images of all the nearby stores and roads. This is one of the simplest and most practical methods. As long as the other party has appeared in any camera, they can't escape their grasp. Suddenly, a Hydra agent's eyes condensed. He suddenly found that in the Des dessert shop, a blue light flashed and then disappeared. So, based on this clue, all the agents focused on checking the surveillance records of the Des dessert shop. Then, all the scenes of Spider-Man's conversation with Des and Gugu stealing the cake were all presented in the eyes of this group of Hydra. Then, the Hydra agent took out the phone and replied, "Sir, the traces of the mission target were found, and the approximate coordinates are near the Des dessert shop in Queens." request satellite support, scan all nearby images, and confirm the target's traces. After thinking for a while, he continued to add, the discovery of the superhero Spider-Man does not rule out the possibility that the other party is already with the dodo. Chapter 220 Hydra's Plan, Spider-Man's Intuition. Queens, on a rooftop of a high-rise building. Click, click. Peter, the Spider-Man who took off his mask, held the chubby Goo on his shoulder and raised his phone to take a few selfies. Then he turned on the video. Hi, my friends. I met a new friend today. He said his name is Goo, a very smart dodo. As he spoke, Peter gently puffed Goo's dark blue wings with his fingers and continued softly, come on, Goo, say hello to my friends. Goo tilted his head and glanced at Peter. He felt that the other party was a little stupid. He took a piece of iron and said he was his friend. However, because he had just eaten a lot of cake and drank several cups of milk tea, he decided to cooperate. Goo waved his wings and said hello to the iron in the hand of this human. After doing this, for some reason, Goo felt a little stupid for believing the stupid words of this human. Then, he waved his wings, and a blue light flashed, and he could reach the dessert circle. He circled a few times, and nodded with satisfaction. This is a gift for the keeper. I hope the keeper will let him go out every day after receiving it. Well, it's okay to follow the human next to him. This human also provides a lot of delicious food. In any case, it's better than the house elf gold coin. When it comes to gold coins, it gets a little angry. Not only does he make him run every time, but he also restricts his food. This made Goo kick the dessert bag in front of him to vent his anger. Peter just saw Goo and said hello. At the same time, he was happy, but suddenly found that Goo teleported away. Watching Goo circling around the cookie ring for a few circles, he quickly put his phone in front of him to record it, and explained, look, our Goo is very smart. This is said to be a gift for his companions. At this time, Goo, who had just kicked a few times, suddenly felt something was wrong, as if something was staring at him. Then, relying on intuition, he found that the safest place was actually next to Peter. Without thinking, he took the bag of dessert rings and flapped his wings directly. With a flash of blue light, he teleported to Peter's chest and placed the bag in front of him to cover himself. Goo. He looked up and called out to the humans above him a few times, as if to remind them of something. Hey, Goo, are you sure there's someone there? Why can't I feel anything? Peter still trusted his intuition very much, and he didn't seem to feel anything wrong. After thinking about it, he still stood up and looked around while holding Goo and the dessert bag, but he still didn't feel anything unusual. Could it be that his intuition was not as good as that of an animal? At the same time, on a rooftop in the distance, several Hydra agents lay on the ground, scanning the dark blue dodo in the distance through the telescope on the sniper rifle. As for the superhero Spider-Man, they didn't spend too much energy, because they knew very well that the most difficult thing was this dodo, which had the ability to teleport in space. According to the intelligence provided by the organization, the distance that this dodo teleported each time was generally controlled at about 20 to 30 meters, but it was not ruled out that it could teleport over long distances. It can be said that, if you are not careful, the opponent may directly leave the attack range and fail completely. So you must be cautious. If you are not careful, the opponent is likely to escape. However, sir, we have detected unusual movements. Spider-Man is scanning back and forth. The dark blue dodo is held in his arms. Because of the bag, we cannot determine the target's location. We cannot rule out the possibility that someone will find traces. Excuse me, shall we start shooting? Sitwell, who was far away in the Hydra base, saw the picture displayed on the screen and heard the message from the agent. After thinking for a while, he pressed the intercom, switched to any channel, and continued to ask, Orlando, how are you preparing? Hydra agent Orlando is now in the high-rise building where Spider-Man Peter is. To be precise, he is in the stairs. As long as they go up one more floor, they can enter the Temple of Heaven. At this moment, after hearing the message from the chief beside him, Hydra agent Orlando glanced at the team members behind him, watching them fully armed and alert. He nodded slightly and said to the intercom, "Sir, everything is ready and we can act at any time." "Okay, stay where you are. When you hear the gunshot, act immediately." Received. After receiving the confirmed information, Sitwell ordered the snipers on the rooftop at the same time. "Snipers, be ready at any time. As long as the dark blue dodo shows any trace, start sniping immediately and try to keep it alive." Received, sir. Long live Hydra. Long live Hydra. After Sitwell replied, his eyes were fixed on the satellite projection screen in front of him. To be precise, Spider-Man's every move. When Sitwell gave the order, Peter suddenly felt a little uneasy in his heart and lowered his head to say to Gugu, "Gugu, maybe your feeling is right. Let's go first. Hold me tight later." As he said that, Peter picked up Gugu, put him on his shoulder, close to his neck, and prepared to leave. "Gugu, Gugu." Gugu cried out to show that he understood, and then his claws tightly grasped Peter's shoulders. Its intuition told it that it was relatively safe around Peter. At the same time, it also began to call its keeper through the contract. It was in danger. Come and save it. Suddenly, whoosh, whoosh, Gugu, who was contacting its keeper, suddenly felt his heart beat. His hair stood up, and he immediately flapped his wings. A blue light flashed, and began to teleport. At the same time, Spider-Man Peter also felt the danger and immediately jumped up. Then, bang, bang, puff, puff. Several bullets similar to bullets were fired from the sniper rifle, bursting in midair, emitting highly anesthetic gas, covering the entire rooftop. At the same time, some anesthetic bullets also began to shoot, trying to hit Gugu. Hearing the gunshots, the Hydra agent in the stairwell quickly ran to the rooftop. At this moment, Gugu, after teleporting, was still behind the rooftop. Smelling the highly anesthetic gas in the air, his head was a little dizzy. Thinking it was not good, he immediately flapped his wings again, and according to his intuition, he flew away and left this dangerous area. However, the gas he had just inhaled was still working, and he felt a little dizzy. Although he had successfully left the area, he felt his wings were getting heavier and heavier, and it was a bit difficult to mobilize the magic power in his body. At this moment, Gugu, come to me, I'll take you away. Spider-Man Peter, who had just jumped up, immediately sensed that this was an anesthetic gas, and then saw Gugu fleeing in the air, as if in the distance, and the bullets shooting wildly. He stretched out the spider silk and shot directly at Gugu, shouting loudly at the same time. He had a special physique, and was highly resistant to anesthetic gas. Gugu, at this moment, heard Peter's voice, and told it directly that it was safer there. He glanced at Peter, and flapped his wings vigorously. A blue light flashed, and in an instant, Peter felt that there was something extra in his arms. He looked down, and saw that it was Gugu. With his thoughts turning, he quickly held his left hand tightly, and shot out spider silk with his right hand, to use the force, to escape from this dangerous area. At the same time that Spider-Man Peter was leaving the rooftop. Bang. With a bang, the Hydra agent wearing a protective mask rushed out from the stairs, saw Spider-Man in the air, and started shooting wildly. Bang, bang, bang. A large number of bullets were fired at Spider-Man, but Peter dodged them all. After seeing Spider-Man moving away, the leading Captain Orlando quickly took out the walkie-talkie and said quickly, "Sir, Plan 1 failed. Spider-Man escaped successfully." At the same time, a voice came from the walkie-talkie. After observation, the mission target has been anesthetized and temporarily lost the ability to teleport. Start Plan 2. A helicopter will pick you up later, and we will start the pursuit together. Long live Hydra. Long live Hydra. PS. There are 2 more updates later, which will be updated after 4 PM. Chapter 221 Crazy Hydra. Spider-Man on the run. Queens. An alley. Damn. A large number of bullets were fired at Spider-Man Peter from above. Bang, bang, bang. Peter, with his sharp intuition and the help of spider silk, quickly dodged the bullet attack from the plane. A large number of bullets were shot behind Peter, piercing the walls and the ground of the alley, while raising a lot of dust. Bang. A wall collapsed, and a lot of dust rose up, obscuring the sight of the shooter above the plane. The Hydra agent on the plane squinted his eyes and carefully observed the traces of the target. Then whoosh. A white spider silk instantly emerged from the smoke and instantly tied the Hydra agent's neck. Immediately afterwards, the Hydra agent suddenly felt a strong force coming from below, and the whole person fell directly from the plane in an instant. The Hydra agent next to him didn't have time to pay attention. After seeing his teammate fall, he hurriedly made up for it and shot wildly at the ground, trying to suppress the enemy's attack. At this moment, Peter, with the help of dust, shot down an enemy and took advantage of the enemy above not paying attention, holding Gugu and running to the neighboring house. After entering the house, he saw the planes outside shooting crazily, and he was immediately scared. Looking at the Gugu in his chest, he smiled bitterly and said, "Gugu, it seems that you are now being targeted by the evil organization. This movement is more powerful than what I saw in the movie." Gugu, 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 who was held by Peter, looked at Peter in front of him and called out weakly, trying to comfort him. He now felt that he had no strength in his body and his wings were very heavy. Fortunately, there was still this human in front of him to protect himself. Damn, why hasn't the breeder come yet? Gugu, you said someone will come to save you later? After Peter understood, he smiled bitterly and said, "It's good that someone will save you, but let's run for our lives first." Just now, less than a minute after resting, Peter suddenly felt that a large number of humans fell on the roof. Fortunately, this house looks like it has not been lived in for many years, otherwise the people living in the house might also suffer. There was a large cloth bag around. Peter's eyes lit up, and he picked up the bag, shook off the dust on it, hung it around his neck, put Gugu in the bag, and freed his left hand. Just now, he was afraid that Gugu would fall, so he kept holding it with his left hand. He could only use the spider silk with one hand, and didn't dare to jump between high-rise buildings as usual. But now it's different. Peter took Gugu to the window, saw the plane outside, shot out spider silk from his right hand, and jumped with the force. He jumped out quickly. At this moment, the Hydra agent sitting on the plane suddenly felt the plane sink and shake a little. Then, he found Spider-Man appeared under the plane, and the next moment, he flew away. "Pilot, 10 o'clock, hurry up, the other party is going to escape the attack range." The agent shouted loudly and walked to the machine gun position at the same time, ready to attack. Bang, 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 bang. Peter flew in the air with the force, felt the crazy fire attack behind him, and jumped up with the help of spider silk, and jumped onto the rooftop of the high-rise building. After scanning around, he found that there seemed to be no enemies on the left. He ran over quickly, shot out spider silk from his left hand, stuck to the wall of the tall building opposite, and flew into the air. At the same time, he shot out spider silk from his right hand again, borrowed the force, and continued to jump far away. Repeating this action, with the help of the power of spider silk, Peter quickly fled far away. Call for support. Spider-Man has escaped the attack range with the mission target. The current coordinates are XXXX. The Hydra agent on the plane looked at the distant figure of Spider-Man and called for support. Support has arrived. Now rush to the coordinates XXXX to round up. Received. The Hydra agent heard the order from the intercom and replied immediately. At the same time, let the pilot fly according to the coordinates given by the commander. At this moment, Peter felt that there seemed to be no enemies behind him, and he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The encirclement and suppression just now really scared him. There were machine guns, planes, and a large number of agents shooting crazily. I didn't expect that he could experience the plot in the movie. After feeling slightly safe, Peter landed on the roof of a tall building, looked at the Gugu on his chest, and said worriedly, "Gugu, do you feel okay? Gugu, Gugu, Gugu." At this moment, probably because the anesthetic gas began to weaken after a while, Gugu felt that his strength had recovered a little and called out to Peter. "That's good. It's good that you're okay." Peter also breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want such a cute Gugu to be captured by an evil agent organization. When he thought of the various animal dissection experiments and genetic modification on the internet, Peter felt chilled. At this time, buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, Peter heard the sound of an airplane from a distance and turned his head to look. He found that the black plane behind him was rushing towards him. With his sharp eyes, he could see that there was a machine gun at the door of the plane. It was exactly the same as the one chasing them just now. In an instant, Peter immediately became alert, stood up quickly, looked around, and found that there was a plane flying towards them on the left and right. Seeing this, Peter stood on the rooftop, rushed forward, notified to shoot out Spider Silk, and continued to escape. But this time, for some reason, he had a bad premonition in his heart. Buzz, 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 bang. Peter, who was jumping in the air, suddenly felt his hair stand on end, and hurriedly turned sideways. With a bang, a bullet passed by. Looking back, he found that it was the attack of a sniper on the plane behind. This made Peter a little nervous. He quickly pulled the spider silk card and flew away. To be honest, he once thought of hiding in a place like a shopping mall. But when he saw the large crowd below, he immediately gave up the previous idea. He didn't dare to bet whether this group of evil agents would kill ordinary people. If they really shot in the crowd, even if he survived, he would have a strong sense of guilt for the rest of his life. He could only run away with Gugu alone. Fortunately, the group of lunatics behind did not use machine guns to shoot again, otherwise he didn't know what to do. He looked down. Although he didn't dare to say that there were people coming and going, the number of people was not small. He could even see clearly that some people looked up at him in the plane and even took out their phones to take pictures. Crazy, really crazy. This is New York. It would be strange if he was not crazy to shoot so recklessly in a plane. Bang. Without time to think, Peter quickly dodged sideways because the sniper bullets shot past him again. Bang, bang, bang. Immediately afterwards, 2 more planes came from the side, and there were snipers on the planes, constantly shooting at him. It was not even sniping anymore, but directly starting to shoot. Peter could only pull the spider silk card and quickly jump far away, hoping to escape the attack range. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Not long after, Peter suddenly found that there was a black plane on the opposite side not far away. At the same time, some black planes appeared not far away, forming an encirclement, and in the center were him and Gugu, 1 man and 1 beast. Bang, 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 bang. A large number of bullets were fired into the air, forcing him to stop on the roof of a tall building. When he stopped on the roof and was about to jump into the alley below to escape, a voice came from the sky. Spider-Man, let go of the dodo on your chest. We can let you go. P.S. The next chapter will be updated at 6 o'clock. I ask for support from the big subscribers. The data has dropped so much recently that I almost collapsed. The average subscription dropped by 50 the day before yesterday, which scared me. The subscription has dropped even more. Big readers, if you can see this, can you give me an automatic subscription? Everything in this book is based on data. I ask for support from all the big readers. After special calculations, these words will not increase unnecessary subscriptions. Big readers, I beg for support. Chapter 220 To Crying Gugu. Spider-Man Peter heard the voice from above and curled his lips in disdain. Do you really think he has watched movies for nothing these years? Whoever believes this kind of obvious nonsense is a fool. Gugu. Gugu. However, Gugu understood the words above, touched Peter's chest with some worry, and cried out, as if worried that Peter would really abandon him. Don't worry, Gugu, I will never abandon you. Peter gently stroked Gugu's head and comforted him. However, he touched his waist and felt some tingling. At the same time, he stretched out his hand and saw some blood. He shook his head with a helpless smile. There were too many bullets just now. Although he dodged frantically, he was still scratched by some bullets. Fortunately, they were all just scratches, and at most he bled a little. Spider-Man, as long as you hand over the dodo on your chest to us, we can not only let you go, but also give you $1 million. The Hydra agent on the plane shouted again, as if reminding the people below. Although he felt that such words were a bit confusing and no one would believe them, it would be better to just shoot directly. No real guns and live ammunition were needed. The tranquilizer gun would also work, but there was no way. The superior asked to stop shooting and delay time. He didn't know why. This was already the best time. Sure enough, bang, 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 go, go, go. Keep chasing. The Hydra agent saw Spider-Man running quickly to the edge of the floor and then jumped up and flew away. While controlling the machine gun to fire, he shouted to the pilot, Peter, who was in the air at this moment, felt the buzzing sound of the plane chasing behind him. There was a bitter smile on his face, but then he turned his face to be determined and kept shooting spider silk to escape from a distance. He just wanted to adjust the direction and escape to the right. As a result, bang, 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 the series of bullets shot behind him made his idea of escaping to the right invalid. He could only continue to fly forward, that is, to the edge of New York. This action, similar to driving, made his heart sink, and he couldn't help but feel irritated. His advantage is that he can use buildings to jump and dodge flexibly, so the more buildings there are nearby, the better it is for him. But in the marginal areas, there are few buildings, so there are fewer places for him to use his strength. If the opponent is not hindered by these buildings, he can shoot recklessly. Unfortunately, there is no way. He can only escape like this. At this moment, suddenly, Goo lying on his chest, feeling Peter's inner anxiety and irritability, called out, as if to express something, "Goo, you really have a way." Peter, who was flying in the air, asked Goo on his chest. Goo called out weakly to express his affirmation. After a short period of time, it recovered some strength. Seeing this, Peter's face was happy. He looked around and saw that the rooftop of a high-rise building not far away was open. The door of the rooftop was bright, and he shot out spider silk and flew away. The Hydra agent on the plane was a little confused and didn't quite understand Spider-Man's approach. At this time, shouldn't he continue to escape forward? Isn't this a target for them on the rooftop? Even if they enter the building, although the enemy's combat power is not bad, with so many people, isn't it just a trap? Then, Spider-Man rushed directly through the door on the top of the building into the corridor. After thinking about it, he turned on the intercom and asked the supervisor, "Spider-Man has been trapped in a tall building by us. What should we do?" After a silence, "Stupid, the enemy has escaped. The mission target has restored the ability to teleport and has the ability to carry others. The enemy has left the nearby area and is currently located in Hell's Kitchen, Kazan Street." Then, there was another pause, as if the other party was a little hesitant. Finally, the agent only heard a cold voice. "This time, kill without mercy. No need to hold back. Bring back the body of the mission target, including Spider-Man." Spider-Man Peter, who had just entered the corridor, jumped down from the stairs and jumped down 3 or 4 floors in a row before stopping. Then, Peter raised the Goo on his chest, put it in front of him, and said with some expectation, "Goo, now it's up to you." Goo looked at Peter, whose face was covered in dust and blood, and cried out in sadness. It was hanging on his chest just now, but after hearing the muffled groans of the human in front of him, he must have been injured. Recalling the previous teachings of the breeder, he waved his wings and controlled his magic. Goo, clean and fresh. In an instant, a light blue light flashed, and the dust on Peter's face disappeared, but there were still some blood stains on his face. This surprised Peter, but he hurriedly urged, "Hurry up, Goo and the others are up there, and they are likely to come in. Let's get out of here quickly." Goo. Hearing the anxious tone of Spider-Man Peter, Goo nodded, called out, and comforted him. Then, he waved his wings, and a blue light flashed, and he teleported to Peter's shoulder. However, Goo standing on Peter's shoulder was a little unstable, probably due to the influence of some residual anesthetic gas. Then, Goo grabbed Peter's shoulders and kept waving his dark blue wings. With each flap, a blue light appeared on Goo body. As he continued to flap his wings, the blue light continued to spread and soon enveloped Peter. Then, with a flash of blue light, Goo and Peter's figures suddenly disappeared. Hell's Kitchen, Kazan Street, the roof of Borak building. With a blue light, Goo and Peter appeared on the rooftop. Goo looked at the strange, but very safe environment around him and called out, as if reminding him of something. Then, he felt that his magic power was consumed a lot, and he was a little shaky. Peter, who was below, quickly caught it and put it in his middle cloth pocket. Then, he took out his mobile phone to determine his current location. Peter was very surprised to see his current location. He had almost run to the edge of New York City just now. As a result, He returned to Manhattan all of a sudden, although it was Hell's Kitchen. The diameter is more than 10 kilometers. If you drive, it will take 1 or 2 hours, even if there is no traffic jam. But seeing Gugu's exhausted appearance, Peter felt a little distressed. After feeling safe, Peter relaxed and felt severe pain in his body. Some bullets hit him just now. Although he tried his best to avoid them, a large number of bullets inevitably hit him. After thinking for a while, he put Gugu aside and comforted him. Gugu, we are safe. You wait here first. I will go find some food and medical tools first. Wait for me, I will be back soon. After that, he gently stroked Gugu's head, put down the cloth bag, and turned to leave. Gugu looked at Peter's leaving figure, tears flowing in his eyes. Recalling the fear in his heart just now, Gugu burst into tears soon. At the same time, he kept calling the contract. Why hasn't the breeder come out yet? I'm injured? Why hasn't he come out yet? It was so scary just now, the bird almost died. However, no matter how it called, the contract seemed to be silent. Gugu cried again, because he had consumed a lot of magic power, and had just recovered from the panic, and soon fell asleep. I don't know how long it took. Gugu suddenly smelled a fragrance, slowly woke up, and heard a familiar voice in his ears. Gugu, get up, see what delicious food I brought you. P.S. Please support me, the data is terrible. Today's 6th update is completed. Chapter 223, Full Fire, Missiles Ready. Gugu, Gugu, smelling a fragrance. Gugu, who had just consumed a lot of magic energy and was a little hungry, gradually woke up. Looking at Peter with blood on his face and the cake in front of him, Gugu called out, as if to greet Peter. Badgie, Badgie. After taking a bite, he found that it tasted good, so Gugu started to eat. However, after eating a few bites, he found that Peter had been holding it. After thinking for a while, he waved his wings and used magic to control the cake to float in front of him. It moved closer to Peter's mouth, as if to indicate, you should eat some too. Peter saw Gugu's actions, smiled, picked up the plastic bag next to him, shook it, and said to Gugu, Gugu, you eat first, there are still a lot here. After seeing this, Gugu nodded to show that he understood, waved his wings, and teleported out of the cloth bag. Then he slowly ate the cake. Eating the delicious food, Gugu's mood gradually eased. After seeing this, Peter smiled, sat aside, and took out the medical box he had just borrowed from a blind lawyer. Although he was confused at first about a blind man storing medical kits, he suddenly understood when he thought that this was Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen. He had heard about the chaos here, even though he was far away in Queens. It was normal to store some medical supplies. Who doesn't have some for emergencies? In case of injury, it would be better to have someone to help treat it. Thinking about it, Peter took out alcohol, gauze, tweezers, cotton swabs, etc. He took off his tattered shirt, revealing slightly bulging muscles, bloodstains on the surface, and bullet holes with bloodstains. With his strong physique, he could heal and stop bleeding quickly. But the scars still existed, and the bullets that entered the flesh did not fall off, so he needed to take them out. He took out a towel from the medical kit and prepared to imitate the movie, biting it in his mouth and taking out the bullets. This was the first time he was shot, and there were 4 bullets. Although he had studied physiognomy before, he still felt a little nervous. HMM. Peter raised the tweezers and pushed them deep into the bullet hole with the help of his mind. Instantly, a sharp pain rose from his mind, making him scream. Then, Peter bit the towel tightly to suppress the sound. Boom. With the sound of the bullet falling to the ground, Peter breathed a sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Put the bullet in front of his eyes, ready to take a good look at what the bullet that hit him looks like. However, with keen observation, Peter saw the faint light in the middle of the bullet flickering, and his face changed immediately. No need to think about it, with years of movie watching experience, it is definitely related to positioning. Thinking of this, Peter quickly stood up and shouted to Gugu, who was still eating cake next to him. Gugu, eat quickly, we have to leave quickly, the enemy has not completely left. Gugu. Gugu heard it and turned his head in confusion. Why didn't it feel dangerous? But after turning his head, he saw Peter sitting cross-legged on the ground, holding tweezers in his right hand, and then clamping something. After thinking about it, he flapped his wings and teleported to the back of Peter. Tilting his head, he saw the metal bullet inside, and he was a little confused, so he waved his wings, controlled his magic power, and took the bullet out of his body. Ah! When Peter felt the bullet coming out instantly, he screamed in pain, and then he felt a cool feeling on his back, even a little comfortable. He reached out and touched it gently and found that, although the wound was still there was no pain. Then, Gugu started to focus on the other 2 bullets. At this moment, suddenly, Peter felt uneasy in his heart, and Gugu was also a little anxious, but for some reason, it was not strong. So after thinking about it, he prepared to continue to take bullets out of Peter, and then buzz, buzz. Peter suddenly heard a lot of familiar airplane sounds from his ears. His face changed, and he ignored the remaining 2 bullets and quickly hugged Gugu back to the cloth bag. He hung the cloth bag around his neck, and prepared to fly away. And this time, bang, 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 Peter, who had just taken action, found that the edge of the rooftop was hit by a large number of bullets. It seemed to prevent him from flying away through the rooftop. Then boom. The huge rocket launcher directly hit the top floor of the building, making a huge roar. The entire top floor collapsed in half, and a lot of dust filled the air. Peter avoided it in time, and did not suffer much damage. At the same time, the dust also concealed his figure. He was about to leave when he suddenly found that bullets were randomly shooting around, as if to hinder his evacuation. Even the stairwell on the rooftop had been destroyed. This made Peter feel bad, and felt that the other party was more vicious, as if they would not stop until they killed them. Gugu, can you still use your ability? Peter hurriedly asked Gugu after finding that the escape route had temporarily disappeared. Now everything depends on Gugu. 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 Feeling Peter's anxiety, Gugu called a few times and hurriedly comforted him. Although he had consumed a lot of magic power before, he had recovered some of it in a short while just now. It is still possible to teleport with people, but the distance is not far. Just as Gugu was about to teleport with Peter, suddenly, puff, puff, puff. Some of the bullets that were fired everywhere just now began to emit highly anesthetic gas, almost instantly covering the entire rooftop. After Peter smelled it, he hurriedly looked at the Gugu on his chest. Sure enough, Gugu began to collapse in the bag again, and his body only moved slightly, which immediately made Peter feel a little depressed. Bang, bang, bang. At the same time, the sound of a large number of bullets firing crazily came from his ears, as if suppressing his range of movement. Peter, who was hiding under the ruins of the wall, felt a little desperate. Staying here all the time would definitely lead to death. After thinking for a while, he said to the Gugu on his chest, "Gugu, wait a moment, I'll rush out first. Remind me immediately after you recover your ability." Although Peter said this, he had a bad premonition in his heart. The opponent fired a large number of bullets, and he rushed out. The probability of being shot was too high, but if he didn't leave, it would definitely be a dead end. Just as he was about to rush out, suddenly, hey, a slight sigh sounded from his ear. Then, a figure appeared in front of him. Under the watchful eyes of Spider-Man Peter, he waved the magic wand in his hand, and in an instant, a complex rune pattern of red flame appeared. Shield of Scala. The next moment, the pattern turned into a shield, covering the 2 people and the beast. Then, Lockhart waved the magic wand again, and hurriedly chanted the spell, quickly transform. In an instant, a transparent ripple covered the entire rooftop. The entire rooftop seemed to be like plasticine, constantly changing. In Spider-Man's eyes, it turned into 2 huge earth and stone arms, grabbing the planes in the air. Boom. Boom. Suddenly, the 2 planes were crushed by the earth and stone arms, and a huge fireball emerged from the palms of the earth and stone. Then, the flames disappeared, and the wreckage of the planes turned into molten iron, covering the arms, as if adding a metal defense film to the earth and stone arms. After the 2 planes were destroyed, Lockhart continued to control his arms to grab the planes next to him. Bang, 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 boom, boom, boom. 2 more planes were destroyed. This frightened the rest of the planes. It was too easy to die. They had just fired desperately, but it was useless. Just as they were about to escape, an excited voice came from the intercom in their hands. Fire at full power. Continue to delay. Support will arrive soon. Missiles are being launched. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224 Missile Attack. Arrogant Hydra. Damn. The Hydra agent who received the order gritted his teeth, set up the machine in his hand, and fired wildly at the metal arm waving in the air. The bullets seemed to be like dense raindrops, constantly hitting the huge metal arm. Bang, bang, bang. Unfortunately, apart from the sparks produced by the bullets and the metal arm in front of his eyes, and the continuous bangs in his ears, at most a slight scratch from the bullet shooting was produced, and there was no other effect. Then, boom, boom. 2 more planes were caught and crushed by the metal arm. After the huge fireball disappeared, the plane turned into liquid metal to further cover the metal arm. The scratches just made became brand new in an instant. Seeing this scene, the Hydra agent on the plane adjusted the position of the machine gun and fired wildly at the wizard who was waving his wand to control the metal arm below. However, bang, 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 Lockhart felt that there was a plane above him, and it started to shoot wildly at him again. He raised his eyebrows and watched the sparks splashed by the collision between the bullets and the shield of Scala. With his mind turning, the metal arm directly grabbed the plane above. Boom. The fireball appeared again, and the remains of the plane turned into molten iron, and the metal arm continued to be cast. At this moment, Peter, who was behind, saw the familiar figure in front of him, and the huge red flame shield covering them in the sky. Especially in front of him, a large number of bullets kept falling like raindrops, mixed with a ball of fire from time to time symbolizing the destruction of the plane, and a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. After thinking for a while, he saw a figure who seemed to be waving a magic wand very casually, holding the Gugu in his chest and walked forward. He asked carefully, "Are you, Mr. Wizard?" Hearing Peter's voice in his ear, Lockhart smiled, turned his head and affirmed, "Yes, Peter." "Mr. Lockhart," Peter exclaimed when he saw the familiar face in front of him. But in addition to a hint of surprise on his face, more of it was expected. He had guessed it long ago. After he entered the hospital and met Mr. Wizard, he had some guesses. It was really a coincidence. As soon as he entered the hospital, he felt that he was being watched the whole time. If he didn't know it in advance, how could it be possible? The most important reason for him to come to the hospital was that Mr. Lockhart asked all the people in the book cafe to have a physical examination. He was also forced to come here by Mary. Later, Mary said that she had investment and wanted to leave the Vincian book cafe and create a book cafe of her own. He was a little confused at the time, so he prepared to go to the Vincian book cafe to verify his ideas. But he unexpectedly found that he couldn't find it. Vincian book cafe, he had been there in person, and he remembered the location clearly, but he just couldn't find it, as if it disappeared out of thin air. But vaguely, he could sense the existence of Vincian book cafe by intuition. This made him firm in his mind that Mr. Lockhart was a wizard. However, facing this weird scene, Peter hesitated a little and finally decided to follow his heart. He didn't forget that he was wandering alone in the empty New York City at that time. The feeling of loneliness was a bit scary. At this moment, Lockhart looked at Peter's expression and knew his thoughts with a little sense. But he didn't say much and focused his eyes on the Gugu in the cloth bag on Peter's chest. Peter stepped forward and said in a somewhat hurried tone, "Mr. Wizard." "No, Mr. Lockhart. At the beginning, the group of agents flew a plane and wanted to catch us. Gugu was anesthetized by their anesthetic gas. Gugu had recovered a little and ate some food, but he was anesthetized again just now. Gugu also took me to teleport." Hearing Peter's words of relief for escaping death, coupled with his somewhat incoherent words, Lockhart showed a gentle smile on his face. He had just received the contract reminder and wanted to open the portal to pick up Gugu directly. As a result, as soon as he opened it, he found that there was a hail of bullets on the opposite side, and Gugu was nowhere to be seen. At the same time, Spider-Man's figure was also seen through the portal, and he felt the movement of the contract positioning. It was clear in an instant that the man and the beast were probably mixed together. However, due to Spider-Man's crazy escape, Lockhart could not accurately locate him. At the same time, because of the existence of the portal, the signal was connected, and Coulson's call came. After answering the call, he realized that Gugu had made such a big fuss. Less than half a day after it was released, Gugu has become the new favorite on the internet. This made Lockhart a little helpless, but there was nothing he could do. After all, this was his own pet. The other party was just greedy, and he didn't do anything to kill or arson. So he asked S.H.I.E.L.D. to help clean up the information about Gugu on the internet. Try to reduce the impact. At the same time, he also contacted Tony directly. His artificial intelligence JARVIS is more effective in this regard. At least, the news about a large number of planes chasing Spider-Man in New York can be suppressed. After all, Spider-Man was chased to protect his Gugu, and the noise was getting bigger and bigger. These details still need to be handled well. Lockhart is not the kind of person who doesn't care about others' help. To be honest, Lockhart was surprised by the arrogant behavior of this group of agents. Over New York, a large number of bullets were fired. Is this really a job for S.H.I.E.L.D. and the military? There was such a big commotion, and he saw that many buildings, glass, and walls were pierced by a large number of bullet holes. The only good thing is that Peter consciously avoided crowded places, so there was no large-scale casualties. Despite this, Lockhart saw that most people on the ground raised their phones to take pictures of the plane shooting Spider-Man. This gave Lockhart a headache, so he quickly cast the Oblivion Charm and the Muggle Repelling Charm to clear the information and let them leave these troubled places quickly. At the same time, he told Tony to pay attention to clearing the information on their phones. Lockhart couldn't let this information leak out on the internet at will. Once it fermented later or someone used it to make a fuss, it would only be more troublesome to deal with. It's better to solve it from the source. Fortunately, the incident just happened, and it only took about a minute. He was fast, waving his wand and directly clearing their previous memories, and Tony asked JARVIS to suppress it on the internet. That's why there wasn't much trouble. Otherwise, the internet in New York would have been in an uproar by now. Even major news media would pounce on it like a beast smelling the aroma of food. He knew that the American media was really unscrupulous and had so many methods that it was dazzling. It was even possible that they would risk their lives and fly a plane to broadcast live. It can be said that Peter was running away frantically in front to protect Gugu, and Lockhart was cleaning up his traces behind. In fact, he could have taken action in advance, but Lockhart felt that he could still control the situation, so he wanted to take the opportunity to leave a deep memory for his aunt. Children, they have to grow up, and it is difficult to have big changes without experiencing some things and setbacks. Sure enough, when Lockhart saw that Gugu felt sorry for Peter and cast a cleaning magic on him, he felt a little relieved. He taught for so long, but this bad wanted to eat all day long, but didn't want to learn. Unexpectedly, it was finally used today. Later, when he saw Gugu taking Peter to teleport over a long distance, Lockhart was even more surprised. You know, in the situation at that time, Lockhart was ready to take action. Sure enough, Gugu still has great potential, but it needs to be pushed. If it is not pushed, the potential will never be transformed into strength. I hope that after all this, Gugu will pay more attention to practicing magic. When Lockhart was looking at Gugu and thinking, suddenly, Peter's anxious voice came to his ears. Mr. Lockhart, look. It's a missile. There will be 5 updates today. The next chapter will be updated later. Chapter 225 Mirror Space, The Destruction of Hydra. Looking at the black spot in the sky in the distance, Peter's anxious reminder came to his ears. Lockhart's face turned cold. Hydra was so eager to test his strength that even missiles had been dispatched. Who is the enemy? Lockhart had already known this by taking the divine thoughts of this group of agents before. He said, who else could dare to be so arrogant except Hydra? However, looking at the missiles getting closer and closer, Lockhart waved his wand directly, and a red flame flashed. In an instant, a circular portal opened towards the missile. Soon, The missile passed through the circular portal and entered the ocean on the opposite side. Then, without waiting for the missile to detonate, Lockhart cancelled the portal. Alexander Pierce, the head of the Hydra who was also observing the battle, saw this scene and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. I didn't expect that this wizard professor could solve the missile attack so easily. But immediately, a sneer appeared on his face. If this was the only trick, then don't blame them. Not long after, Lockhart saw several more black dots in the distance. This time, the missiles were fired at him from several directions. And they kept adjusting their directions, as if they were guided by intelligence. At the same time, dozens of fighter planes also flew towards him, shooting at him frantically from a distance, mixed with rockets. It seemed that they wanted to delay his actions, and not give him a chance to escape. Seeing this, Peter, the Spider-Man next to him, had an anxious look on his face, while Lockhart had a blank expression. Dap, 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 boom, boom, boom. Watching the sparks splashed by a large number of bullets hitting the shield of Scala, and the fireballs from the rockets, Lockhart waved his wand slowly and powerfully, outlining a series of silver-white silk threads that exuded a lot of magic. The silver-white silk threads kept interweaving along the strange trajectory, forming a complex, mysterious rune pattern. Magic mirror space. Cap, 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 cap. Peter heard a sound like a broken mirror, as if he suddenly remembered something, and shuddered. Then, he saw cracks appearing in the space around him, like broken mirrors, and then exploded. The next moment, Peter felt as if he had come to a new world. However, Peter could still hear the sound of bullets shooting, and the roar of rocket launchers not far away. In addition, the black dots in the distance, that symbolized the black missiles were still in front of him. Lockhart saw the plane and the shooting bullets in front of him. He gently waved his wand, and in an instant, the surrounding high-rise buildings quickly spread to the heights and wrapped them. In just 2 or 3 seconds, the plane that was originally flying high in the sky and the Hydra agents on it, they found a shadow in front of them, and the next moment, the surrounding buildings directly wrapped them up. Darkness. Pain. The plane exploded, and the hot fireball flashed in the air, and then it was extinguished. All destroyed. Then, Lockhart gently stepped on the rooftop ground under his feet, and in an instant, the high-rise building rose from the ground, and kept rushing upwards. Soon, Peter stood on the edge of the platform, and could overlook the entire New York. Although there was still no one around, the shock in his heart was self-evident. The next moment, he saw Mr. Lockhart gently clasping his hands together, and the missiles flying towards them not far away, as if affected by some force, began to rush towards each other. Boom. After several huge fireballs, the missiles disappeared. After seeing all the enemies destroyed, Peter finally relaxed. Then, he found that Mr. Lockhart tilted his head, and looked at him with interest, smiled, as if he thought of something. He picked up Gugu from his chest, and handed it to Lockhart. At this moment, Gugu felt heavy all over because of the influence of an anesthetic gas. After seeing the breeder, he was excited and wanted to speak, but found that he couldn't even open his mouth. He could only look at Lockhart with resentful eyes, as if complaining about why he came now. Lockhart saw Gugu's resentful eyes, and ignored it directly. He stretched out his wand and gently tapped Gugu's eyebrows. A milky white light passed by, and Gugu felt that his strength had returned. Gugu, Gugu, Gugu. Feeling that his body had returned to normal, Gugu flapped his wings and teleported directly to Lockhart's shoulder, and kept calling out. He told how hateful these people were, how pitiful he was, and that the food he had prepared for the keeper was also lost. After hearing this, Lockhart helplessly stroked Gugu gently, and then began to slowly scold him. Gugu, now you know how important it is for me to let you learn magic? Look, if you learn the magic I taught you, how could any defense shield be affected by an anesthetic gas? And if you open the portal directly, wouldn't it be safer to return home? How can it be like this? Accurate teleportation can only be done over a short distance. Once the distance is extended, it becomes random. Hearing the keeper constantly scolding him in his ear, Gugu's originally energetic expression began to droop. Peter, who was next to him, saw this scene and laughed softly. Gugu, Gugu. Gugu was a little angry after hearing this. But seeing Peter's face covered with dust and blood, he immediately shouted to Lockhart, as if to tell him that, if it weren't for Peter, he would have been miserable. Listening, Lockhart gently said to Peter, "Sorry to bother you, Peter. If it weren't for you, Gugu would have suffered a lot." As he spoke, he stretched out his wand and pointed at Peter lightly, and a transparent ripple enveloped Peter, clean and new. In an instant, Peter only felt a gust of wind blowing. Then all the dust and dirt on his body disappeared, including his hair, clothes, etc., which were all brand new. However, Lockhart looked at some scars on Peter's face and arms, took out a bottle of white water, waved his wand, and controlled the white water to flow into every wound in his body. At the same time, all the remaining bullets in his body were taken out. A moment later, a complete Peter appeared in front of Lockhart and Gugu. 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 Gugu looked at Peter without any scars, and cried out excitedly, flapping his wings at the same time. Nangang flashed and teleported, rubbing his head affectionately on Peter's shoulder. He expressed his gratitude to Peter for saving him before. Lockhart smiled when he saw this scene, and felt that Gugu had experienced some things, and should be considered grown up. He hoped that after this incident, Gugu would listen to what he said later. Magic should be practiced as it should be practiced, and the body should lose weight as it should be lost. It can't be a mess anymore. At the same time, looking at Spider-Man Peter who was gently stroking Gugu, Lockhart was thoughtful. He didn't forget that he had promised Snape before, and originally wanted to get some blood without anyone noticing before leaving. Now it seems that this time is good, and there is a good chance to establish a stable supply relationship. With his mind turning, Lockhart waved his wand and opened a red flame portal, opposite which was his study. Then, he said to Peter gently, "Peter, come on, come to my house and sit down, and eat something by the way, to make up for some of the previous physical consumption. There will be 5 updates today, and the next update will be at 4 o'clock. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.